Hello, 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 everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. We'll switch over just in a second. I'm just trying to make sure if the announcements go out, because there seems to be something wrong with them. So let me make sure that it all works. Oh, I feel like it's going to be really warm in here. Hello? Announcement? Please? So weird. Okay, so there we go. What is happening with it? So that seems to have all worked. Ta-ta-ta. And now we just wait for Discord to pick it up, I guess? Okay, we'll give it a minute. We'll give it a minute and we'll keep an eye on it. Right, so let's switch on over. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you. Lovely to see you here, Lily. Lovely to see you too, Megvel and Rustam, Ofek, Pudi, and Stefan. It's good to see you all. Hope you're having a beautiful day. The weather is going to be nice, so we'll see if I'm going to be boiling to death in here, but we'll keep that in mind. So yeah, we're back for some more portfolio reviews. We're just going to be chatting for a little bit, as we always do. A little bit of chatting beforehand, then get into some portfolio reviews, and then potentially do something else. It kind of depends on the time, because I do have an important meeting with Sunny, the lead from our courses, because we are basically going to go through our entire catalog of courses that we've built, and we're going to basically go through every lesson and make sure that we really polish every single lesson up and just flag what's missing so that we can really just focus on getting it all done. So that will be a pretty long one. So I'll need to head off at 3, which is in like 3 hours from now. So yeah, do keep that in mind. But yeah, that's going to be good though. I'm looking forward to it. And then we're also going to be doing the first meeting about the team challenges as well, because they're coming up in like a month. So we're going to get that back on track too. So exciting stuff. And then hopefully we can fill out another row in the team challenges here, which would be good. But yeah, what's everyone else been up to? Let me know what you've been up to in the meantime. How's the week been? Lily saying team challenges? Yes. It's getting to be about that time, huh? I am looking forward to it. Hello, Idris. Good to see you. I don't think I've seen you before, so welcome, welcome. Oh, Megval, you tried out Marathon yesterday. Okay. How was that? From the outside, for me personally, I'm not a big fan of like these like well, I wasn't a big fan of like Battle Royale and then like these escape type shooters. Not really my thing. I was really hyped for the art direction of the game, right? And then once I saw the initial art direction be revealed, I was like, okay, this is going to be really out there. And then, to be honest, like the art direction that they have for the game just doesn't feel like it aligns with the initial expectations that I had for the art direction. But how did you find it though? What's your first impressions? I'd be curious to hear. I think let's just make a manual announcement again. You like the art so far? Okay, that's good. Maybe I shouldn't judge the book by its cover then, huh? I usually watch most of the time, but this is the first time that I'm writing. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome, Idris. Thank you so much for popping in, supporting the channel. But yeah. Yeah, so how's my week been? Let's see. It's been, I mean, I feel like I say this every time, but it feels like it's really busy, you know? Busy, busy, busy. Basically, every moment of spare time, I'm trying to invest into writing courses and like video editing and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's been going good. I'm hoping to finish off like all the foliage courses that I've been doing. Well, that Dennis Welling, who's our course instructor, is doing, and I'm doing all the cleanup and design and all that kind of stuff. So I hope to finish that up this weekend, hopefully. And then I'm going to go back to my own art fundamental lessons about like color theory. I got some stuff about shape language. I got some things about like reference gathering that I still need to finish up. So it's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done, as well as just like website work, because we also need to make like a proper landing page and make sure that that looks really nice as well. Let me actually quickly have a look at what's happening with that announcement. So, okay, we're gonna try this live. We're gonna run this again, see if it picks it up. Da da da. Because also, interesting. Interesting. Okay. Let's have a look here. That is definitely not done. Okay, give me just a sec. We're testing things live. We're seeing if the Discord announcement is going to go out. Bam, bam. If not, we can just leave it for the week. And then it's just another thing to fix. Oh, interesting. Okay, I need to definitely figure that stuff out. Okay, cool. So the announcement has gone out, which is good. Good. We'll publish this. There is some stuff that I need to fix apparently, but we will fix that later. We'll just ignore it. Okay, cool. So that has gone out, which is good. I like that. Cool. Okay, so now we can focus on the stream. Let's see. Been playing Marathon? No, it's not a game that really interests me, honestly. But Mekval was saying that the gunplay feels pretty good as well, but only played for like about an hour and a half. Okay, that's interesting. I think the demo is free, right? So maybe I should give it a try, because that is actually one thing that I'm doing a lot now. Is I'm playing a lot of demos, which is pretty interesting. I played a demo of the Underkeep, I think. I played a demo of Deep Dish Dungeon, and I played a demo of... God, what was the name of the other game yesterday? I've basically been going through Steam Next Fest and just downloading a bunch of demos and then like backing them up. But I was really enjoying this game that I was playing yesterday, which is called... Let me have a look. It was not Ardenfell. It was called Darkhaven. It's sort of like... Yeah, it's sort of like Diablo, but like open world. Like true open world. And you can also manipulate the terrain and all that kind of stuff. Which I'm like, I'm interested in what that is going to do to the actual gameplay, right? Because at this moment, we have not used it yet. But maybe we'll play a little bit of that at the end of the stream. I'm curious to see a little bit more of it. The Underdark demo was actually pretty good. Or like Underkeep. I think that was a pretty interesting game. It's more of a traditional... You have your movement is grid based, but it's like a traditional RPG, and your movement is grid based, and you see like enemies coming at you, and it's actually pretty nice. Check out Replaced. Haven't tried it, but the art looks really cool. Yeah, I've actually been following Replaced for like years now. And the reason why I followed that game was because of its predecessor that I think never came out. It was called like The Last Night. That was basically setting the precedent of the art style that is now Replaced. I don't know if what happened there specifically, but yeah, Replaced looks really cool, and it has a really good soundtrack already. So the audio for the game is already in like a really good spot, which is awesome. But I think with that game, so here's the thing that I have with demos, right? Like I'll avoid demos for a lot of the games that I really want to play, because the issue that you have, or that I have with demos, is that you then get to play the initial experience of the game, And then once the game comes out, then you have to do that initial experience again. And it's kind of like, ugh, now I need to get through this, right? So for games that I really want to play, I'll stay away from them. Like Replaced, I'll probably buy that. And then we'll see. What is Replaced? I think it's like a 2D pixelated side scroller. I think like murder mystery game, right? I don't know actually. That's the thing. Like for stuff that really interests me, I don't really dive deep into it. It is nice for games that you aren't sure about though. Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. So that's why I'm playing a lot of demos now, where I'm like, okay, I like some stuff of it, but I'm not convinced about the package that they're trying to sell me, right? So that's why it's actually the first time that I'm playing so many games on Steam Next Fest, which is pretty cool. I should actually do that more often. I got bad news on Fairsoft, but still published the results. Mind checking? Probably not during this stream, but you can always send it to me. Requiem also got released. Really impressive visuals. Requiem, let's have a look. Requiem. For me, a trailer is enough. If the genre is for me and it's cheap enough, I'll buy it. Yeah, I am really stingy with my time and my money, which is like really bad if you're trying to sell me a game. So yeah, you need to do a lot of convincing, and yeah, that's why Replaced looks really cool, right? I'll show it on stream. Let me switch on over. Let's make sure that it didn't break up. But I like the visuals. I like the art direction. This is something that already really looks good. I do really like the art direction here. It is cool. I do really like it. Yeah, this looks cool. It does, right? It really does. What else have we been looking at? This is on my wish list, like Coffee Talk. This might not be a game that you would associate with me, but I freaking love Coffee Talk. Oh my god, it's so good. I was a big fan of the first one. Like, the first one was my core memory when it comes to well, COVID, I guess, right? But yeah, it was so good. I loved it. I love that type of pixel art, like the modern style. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff that's coming up in that sphere, you know? Is that dynamic lighting? It probably is. Not a huge fan of side scrolls usually, but might try it just for the art. Yeah, I feel like I'm in the same boat as you there, McFowl. Like, I'm not really that much into, let's say, a side scroller, but I'm like pretty open to be convinced when the art is good, right? Can I send my Instagram instead of a portfolio? Will you check it out? No, unfortunately, I will not check out anyone else's portfolio. I will be doing portfolio reviews for people that we already got lined up. So we've got 2 people lined up today. We've got Ashish and Sergu, who we'll be looking at today. Yeah. But yeah, that is what the plan is for today. You seen Down South? Down South. I probably won't play it, but it looks cool. I don't think so. Down South? Let's have a look. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah, this doesn't look like something that I would be into, like, immediately. Nah, this doesn't speak to me at all. Just like in an instant, not really. What I do want to do though is I want to be more open to different genres. So I might try to play the demo of this actually. Because sometimes I'm a bit too stingy with stuff, you know? But yeah, I think there's some really good stuff that I've been playing already. And also, like, I will be playing a lot more games in the foreseeable future because I am actually going to be participating in a jury of some sorts. But I will be making more announcements about that soon. So yeah, I will be playing a lot of games and get more involved in the indie scene, which is cool. Windrose is pretty good if you like survival games. On and off, I like survival games. Let's have a look. Windrose. Pirate survival games. Is this the quadruple A experience that people are hoping for, you know? Does look interesting. I mean, the graphics are definitely really well done. Yeah. Interesting. Any game with building mechanics and I'm in it. Yeah, I do like, I mean, you can see it right here, right? Like, played a lot of Enshrouded, played a lot of Valheim. Maybe not a lot of Valheim as other people do, but like, I really enjoyed Enshrouded. But yeah, I feel like it's hard to convince me for like one of these games that is just like, oh, I'm playing a survival game, and most of the core mechanics of survival games are so similar that it's like, it's really hard to differentiate between games at a certain point, you know? But yeah, again, maybe we'll try and play this in a couple of days, maybe over the weekend or something. Would be cool. Croak is a really cool one. I tried the demo and it has really fun mechanics. Croak. Did I can waffled it? Oh yeah, I saw this. Fast-paced platformer where your tongue grapple is your ultimate tool. I'll tell you what I'm looking for though. I am looking for a really interesting, I don't know, more traditional RPG. That is what I'm looking for. Because I've got a lot of ideas in my mind on like a game that I want to see. So I want to get more into that genre, like an adventure RPG, you know? That is a bit more story driven, or maybe not story driven, but like a lot more heavy into world building rather than a platformer or something like that, let's say. But this looks fun though. This does look fun, just not a game that I would be into. The animations and the art looks really cool though. The music is beautiful as well. I like it. I like it. But yeah, so we're doing some scouting around. We're seeing if we can find some interesting games. I do want to play Rain World. Yeah, Rain World has an interesting premises, right? Where, what is it, like the world is evolving and dynamic, so like creatures can fight each other and like you are a part of the ecosystem. You're not like the main character in the ecosystem, right? If I'm thinking about the right game, that is. Survival games need a hook for me, but it can't just be Minecraft Valheim, but different. Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know, like at a certain point, I've played No Man's Sky for ages, I've played Enshrouded, I've played Minecraft and Valheim and like all these games, and at a certain point it's like, okay, cool. Like I'm playing let's say Minecraft, but just with a different skin and maybe more crafting options, right? And I'm just like, okay, but what is the real interesting catch here, right? Like what are you buying me into? And I think with a lot of them, it's to me, I want to see a bit more story. You know, I think that's why I gravitated towards something like Enshrouded, because it's trying to incorporate like story into it, even though the story is not necessarily that great, and it's probably, I don't know, in my opinion, like the most undercooked thing in that game. But yeah, it can't just rely purely on the mechanics, in my opinion. Well, that's not what I'm looking for, at least. Doesn't have a demo, but I'm excited for Blood of the Dawnwalker. Yeah, that looks really good. That looks really good. That does look good. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious for studios, the next studio that is going to swing for the fences, right? And I forgot the studio's name, but Blood of the Dawnwalkers definitely looks like it's a swing for the fences. So I'm curious how well that's going to do. All right. Yeah. So that's what I've been doing. Instead of just playing the boring old Factorio like I would do, every evening, I'm trying to expand a little bit more, and I'm trying to play like different demos. So if you have any demo suggestion, feel free to send it to me over DMs in Discord or something, and then we can check it out. There was also this other game that one of our community members actually sent over to me because it was their first gig in the industry. And it was called something Bastogne. Let me see. Where is the message? In my messages. Somewhere. There we go. Distant Shore. Not Bastogne, Bretagne. That also looked like pretty interesting. It was a mix. I'll show it on stream in just a sec. So this is from one of our community members that has worked on this game, which looks pretty interesting. I think it's supposed to be a combination of Portal and Edge Runners, right? Not Edge Runners. Mirror's Edge. That's the one. So yeah. It does look interesting. It does look cool. So yeah, people do be making some really cool stuff out there. Yeah, there's so many games. It is cool though. It is cool to see how many games are on the market and to see the variety and how niche some of them are getting right now. It's really cool. Let's see. Where did everything go? Crimson Desert is trying so much that it's going to be interesting to see if it all works in the end. Yeah, I'm not convinced by something like Crimson Desert. And I know I should, again, this is looking at it from the outside, right? I'm reading too much into the cover rather than the actual book. I honestly should give it a try before making a statement. But a game like that doesn't really grab me because it's too much all at once, right? And I think for me, I'm looking for something that has a bit more grounded world building, right? And I'm very specific and very niche, right? So I'm definitely not the target audience for games like this. But I'm looking for something that's more grounded and that I can be, I don't know, it evolves over time instead of just being like, oh, we're in this like rough medieval setting, but there's also a clan out there that has like fucking flying mechs, you know? So it's like, I like that from like a wild creativity perspective, right? But it's constantly running into the wall that I have where it's like, I want to have a consistent world building where it's more grounded. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I really want to see a dark RPG cave exploration game. Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, there's so many cool things that you can do. You can genre mash, and like, it's relatively simple to create your own games these days, which is really cool. Hey, thanks for the donation, Mohammed. Hello all, good to see you, good to see you. Personally, I prefer games that focus on one area. The idea of a kitchen sink type game just doesn't grab me, I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm listening to like a lot of interviews from like well-known game designers, and they sort of say the same thing, where it's like it is relatively easy to make a game that has multiple designs, but it is really difficult to make a game that merges them all together consistently. And I think that's what some of these games feel like to me. Like for example, the action RPG that I was playing. I think it's called Darkhaven. I like what it's doing, but then its unique spin on the genre, it's supposed to be like a Diablo kind of game, right? To make it really understandable for a lot of people here. But then their unique spin is that they also have terrain editing and it's voxel based. But then it's like, but okay. To be fair, I've not played too much of it, so I haven't encountered those things into it, but I don't feel that if you're making an action RPG like a Diablo-like, right, that the thing that's needed is terrain editing. It just feels like that sounds like a cool idea that someone had, but it doesn't feel like it's intentionally built into the game from the ground up. Again, I still need to get to the part where I actually get access to those mechanics, so we'll see. Maybe they do a really good job at it, but from the outside, it just feels like, interesting. Yeah, we will see. We will see. It is really cool that so many creative ideas are on the market right now, though. Like, it feels really vibrant, you know? And especially for a person who's mostly involved in, like, AAA, like, just seeing the indie scene and... yeah, it feels really vibrant, you know? And there's like a lot of ideas and there's a lot of things being tested, which looks really cool. It's just, yeah, I like the vibe that I get from it. Or the feeling from the community. McFall saying like the hub thing that you mentioned for the Tom Clancy games, that feels out of place. Yeah, exactly. Like we were talking about this a couple of sessions ago where I think it was Tom Clancy's Breakpoint, where the fantasy that we're trying to set up is you are surviving as a lone survivor on an island, right? And you have to take out like an enemy faction, right? And you have to do that systematically, blah, 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 blah. And then they have a social hub in the middle of it. So after a mission, you go back to your social hub and get to like sit down with other people just to show off cosmetics. And it's like, this is so anti what the game's fantasy is supposed to be that it feels really disjointed, right? And it immediately just kills the fantasy. Because now you're surrounded by like 100 people trying to run around with like flashy stuff, right? This feels weird. Ashish is saying if you can block enemies with terrain editing, it can feel like another ability. It could be interesting. Yeah, so okay, here's the thing. I was actually working on a game prototype like ages ago. We're talking about like, I don't know, 6 years ago or something like that. And my idea was something along these lines where it was like a hex-based like action RPG. And this already sounds like a terrible idea now looking back at it, right? But my idea was that instead of having your normal skills, everything would have to be done with the terrain, right? So you would have actions where you would push the terrain up and it would create like a shockwave and then it would like bounce people back, or it would remove like a section in the terrain to like let them fall into a hole with lava or something like that, right? But like I was trying to sort of play test and like try out to prototype like how can I make something that is like super ingrained with like this dynamic terrain editor kind of stuff, right? And then build a fantasy around it, right? So it's basically core design elements first, and then you construct the world around it, right? But yeah, I mean, it never really got that far, right? Because at that point, I mean, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Plus, also, I don't have a programming background, right? And that's something that needs like a programming support. But I think I think my thought process was in the correct place though. Where I think if you wanna add something to the game, it needs to then be merged into the core mechanics, right? And then art can come in and even massage it in more, right? Because if you have a place where the core mechanics is you're destroying hex tiles and you're adding hex tiles and you're just like disrupting the terrain or like, I don't know, creating shockwaves and all that kind of stuff, then it's like, okay, how can we make the art feel like maybe it's floating islands, you know? Floating islands, something like that. But yeah, I don't know. It is interesting, and everything is 1,000 times easier just by like trying to come up with the idea, right? But then making it and playtesting it and then refining it takes like a lot of time. So yeah, but it is really interesting to see that a lot of people are experimenting, you know, and being exposed to it as well. Because here's also the thing, right? Like a lot of the stuff that we see now on Steam Next Fest is people trying to make their first games, or like teams making their first games, or the studios making their first games, or something like that, right? And sometimes, like, you know, the first game is okay, but that game being okay is needed to then be able to refine, um, to be able for you to refine that in the next game, right? And then refine it in the next game. Could be a great starting idea, but it needs a lot of experimenting. Oh yeah, like that's game development, right? That's also why games are so difficult to make, right? And that it's even crazy that some of them come out at all, because we can have this idea into our mind, and it might sound really good, and everyone is on board, and then you make it and it doesn't work, and then you have to pivot, and then you have to be creative and like solve it, you know. But yeah, it is interesting though. Hello, Arvid. Good to see you. Abstract Duck is saying, how much attention do you pay to topology? Way less than I used to. Only when you have like crazy restrictions should you pay like a lot of. This is a tricky question, right? Because as a junior, you should pay more attention to your topology because you want to showcase that you can do your topology correctly, right? Because topology has an effect on the way that your meshes get shaded and obviously on performance as well, right? So you need to showcase that you can do topology by making like one really good asset and making sure that you pay attention to all of it. And then the rest of your scene can be, I don't know, a bit less paid attention to when it comes to the topology. Sounds like all those crazy manipulations with terrain in the Worms games for old timers. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That brings me back. That brings me back to the old Worm games. I remember going to my friends across the street, and these are like my childhood friends, right? Going to my friends across the street and playing underneath their, what is that called? Like a top bunk bed, but it doesn't have like a bottom bunk bed, and they had like a PC like built into the little nook, and we would play Worms the entire time. It was so good. Indie game market is really good right now, at least in Steam Fest. I feel like people have stopped chasing trends. Oh, I think that's where indies shine, right? Because they don't need to chase trends. Because if you find a really interesting combination of a couple of mechanics, you can make them shine by themselves, right? Because this is the thing with AAA games. The reason why we don't see enough creativity is because the companies have ballooned to such a size where they need to be able to support their developers, right? Which means that if I make a game, you know, the idea that I had, if I make a game about manipulating terrain tiles to like kick off enemies from like different platforms of islands, that doesn't sound like a game that's going to be able to support like millions and millions of income to then be able to support a full game development studio, right? It also doesn't sound like a game that can support like a, I don't know, 400 developers working on it, right? But you can see that if you the risk increases if you try to be like really creative, and that is counterproductive to trying to make a big a big marketed game, right? I think overthinking is maybe the biggest issue of making a game. I don't. Well, it depends, right? Like maybe in indie scenes where like people spend to overthink, but there's something nice about a person who has a clear vision and then spends a lot of time thinking about those things so that it can really be his vision that comes out of it, right? If overthinking, and this is just like a general case, right? If overthinking leads to like non-action, if you're not doing anything while thinking at the same time, then that's not good, right? That's just like stalling the game. But that can happen on like your own personal work and all those other things too, right? So overthinking in general can be bad, but also if you spend a lot of time thinking about specific little niche details that can really set your game apart, right? Could you please review my artwork on ArtStation? My profile name is John VA. I'm currently a first-year art student and would appreciate your feedback. If you want to get feedback, then please sign up to the community. It's going to be really helpful because we only review people that are a part of our community. So apologies for that, but I mean we do offer a lot of really interesting and helpful resources when you become a part of our community. So if you are thinking about going into environment art, feel free to check it out. But yeah, doing well. I hope you too. Have you seen some of the Resident Evil 9 visuals? It's so good looking. I don't really follow like Resident Evil. Like I used to be a massive fan of horror games, and then I just got like really tired of them. So I don't really follow up with like Resident Evil or any other horror game really. It's almost like I've gotten too. I think I've gotten too sensitive for just like the brutal, realistic violence and gore on display of those games now. So I don't need that in my life anymore, you know? Because there was something interesting about earlier games where a lot of the horror was lived in your imagination, right? But right now, like the horror games are getting so good that it's just ugh. It's gross, right? I mean, obviously that's what you want for a horror game, right? But maybe that's not what I want in my life. Just seeing how stunned their game engine is. Which engine is that? Do they still have their own internal engine? Because let's see. Does it even say? The RE engine. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I see. So that's like their own game engine for like basically all the Resident Evil games, but also Monster Hunter Wilds, Dragon's Dogma. Oh, okay. So that's like the major engine for all Capcom stuff. Yep. That's cool. That is cool. What else is running in that? Let's have a look. Street Fighter, Resident Evil, Dragon's Dogma, Pragmata. Yeah, interesting. Capcom lightly proprietary. Yeah. I think it's interesting that there's a lot less proprietary engines now than there were a while back. And I don't think a lot of new studios are picking up like making their own engine from scratch. It's so daunting now. Is it Outlast Trials that is really gory and disturbing? I have not checked out Outlast Trials, but I do know that the first game was like that was one of those interesting games where I would still like watch it and be like really intrigued by like the setting of it. Because it was so creepy. So creepy. Hello, To Love. Hello, hello. Hello, LE. Good to see you both. While Czechs like to make their own stuff. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's still examples of it, and I think it's for good reason, right? It's for good reason because even with like a big, massively adopted engine, you're still going to run into limitations. And I think sometimes, to be fair, I've never worked with Unreal Engine as an engine on a professional project, right? So take this with a grain of salt. But I think also the amount of stuff that is in Unreal Engine can also be daunting to then make your own game with that doesn't need, like, let's say 70% of those features, you know? Plus licensing, it costs money. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I think wasn't the weren't the costs for like indie developers like really lax because they want to entice people to jump over to the engine, right? Obviously, for like big AAA productions, yeah, that definitely plays a role. But I would definitely say that if you then have to hire like a team of software developers who are like really difficult to find, by the way, um, and then have to pay them a salary, I would be curious to see at what scale it's actually more beneficial for you to just use Unreal Engine compared to hiring your own initial team of, like engine developers, render developers, all that kind of stuff, right? Just use Godot at that point. Godot is not at the point where you can like reliably publish like games on it yet, right? Um, because it is making good strides, but from what I can tell, and it's been a while since I looked at it. I mean, a while. I say like a couple of months, let's say. It is even pretty tough to make a really good looking AAA quality, quote unquote, environment art in it because you have to do a lot of stuff. Didn't DICE use Godot for Battlefield level editing? Yeah. So if you are doing that, then that sort of makes sense, right? But that's like a separate thing. Road to Vostok is the only game that I've tried in Godot. I don't think I've ever played a game that's in Godot, actually. We need to give it a try. Would need to give it a try. Because yeah, there are. Yeah, yeah, it is interesting. It's interesting. I think Unreal is more like a Swiss knife. It can do it all, and custom engines are more target to only what they need. That depends, It depends for which company, right? Because if you're working within like Ubisoft, for example, they have their own proprietary engines, but it's like they have to be a Swiss Army knife because they both make like VR games, but also like triple A like open world games too, right? Um, but usually the difference there is that they work with separate branches, right? So you might have heard about, let's say, an engine at a certain company, but what might happen is that there's separate developments happening on different branches um, of those engines where, let's say, one developer team is working on like let's say a VR game, right? They will make VR specific stuff into that engine, and when that game ships, then they'll look at like all the good stuff that they've done that is reusable for future projects and then merge it in the mainline branch, and that's how a game engine evolves over time, right? Or at least the ones that I'm used to. Do all Ubisoft studios use Snowpro, or is it just massive? No, Ubisoft has three engines, right? So it has Snowdrop, it has it has or had a Dunia engine, which is the engine that we worked on, and then it has the Anvil engine, which is the engine that powers like all the Assassin's Creed games. And I think Snowdrop is mostly used by Massive. I'm not too sure about that one though. But I'm assuming that other companies within the entirety of Ubisoft are using it too, for sure. Yeah, Massive made it for sure. Ubisoft is not using CryEngine. So Ubisoft is using its own version of CryEngine. A lot of the Ubisoft engines have their roots in CryEngine, and then they develop them over time. But now they're so distinguished from CryEngine that they're no longer called CryEngine, but they have their roots in CryEngine. For example, the Dunia engine that we used was in the beginning was a separate branch from CryEngine, or Ubisoft had a deal with Crytek and then bought up the rights to it, and then they made their own engine on top of it, right? It's sort of like CIG is doing, where yeah, exactly, with Amazon Lumberyard, where like Cloud Imperium Games, they have a deal with Amazon to then build their own version of like their own engine, but it's built on top of Amazon Lumberyard, as far as I can tell. Frostbite, CryEngine, Decima, and Red Engine. Rage are my personal favorites. Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at like a really good engine, I don't know, is that the Doom engine, Rage? Because I still have like a very outdated view of like the Rage engine, where that was made for like the Rage games, where they had like the mega textures and they would stream in like horribly, and now they've removed it completely. But yeah. Yeah, if you look at it like a good example of like a nice, well-optimized engine, you have to look at like the Doom engine. Like, those games, they run like smooth. Seen some Mad Evolution Engine 3, and there's some legacy code dating back to Quake. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right? If you have a basic component like a door, for example, that was made in CryEngine, you don't really want to change like that component that much. So it's highly likely that the old code in newer engines that have branched off from, let's say, CryEngine, are still using that original code to a certain degree for doors, right? So it does make sense. It's just built on top of like all the years of development, right? You're just saying, in the environment that I'm making, there are statues. Since I'm not a character artist, I'm struggling a bit. Do you think it's important to show this in my portfolio, or how detailed does it need to be? Yeah, this is a good reminder for if you have any questions about your portfolio, or if you have any questions about game dev in general, feel free to ask them in the chat and we'll talk about it. And then in a minute, we'll jump over to some portfolio reviews. But to get back to your question, Idris, you were asking about statues, and you're not a character artist and you're struggling, right? If you are struggling with that a bit, you can download a base mesh and then use that as a base to start working from. If that is still too much of a struggle, you can also look at some online museums that have statues available, and sometimes they might even have like a 3D downloadable that you can use as well. Or you can just use an asset from an asset pack, let's say, for example. However, with that, I will say, if the statue is core to your scene, if it's the most important thing in your scene, then don't replace it by something else. You will need to make it yourself. Because here's the thing, like if you make an environment around, let's say, a statue, right? You need to make that statue as unique as possible, because that is the most important thing to your storytelling in your scene, right? Digital Hound is saying, yes and no, ZBrush hard skills will always be valued when they need. Remember that it's up to you how detailed those statues are. Hero prop versus general population asset. Yeah, I think there's definitely something about like hard skills being valued, right? That's where sort of the conversation about grit and following through and making sure that you don't only do the easy stuff, because then you only get like the easy jobs that are easy to replace, you know? So if you want to be recognizable and you want to stand out, then you have to do the difficult stuff. Rustam is saying you can photo scan something at the street and adjust it. That's also true. That's also true. I've seen a lot of breakdowns of Indiana Jones game. Their engine seems valid though. Yeah. Do you know anyone at Embark? That studio seems to be getting seems getting hit after hit, as in like successful hits, right? I know a bunch of people that have worked there. I don't know if they still are there. Yeah, that studio is from the ground up trying to do something different, right? I feel like what that studio has captured is that they captured a sense of just being like really open and honest about game development, and that if something sucks, I get the sense that that team will just say it outright, and then how can we fix it, right? Where in a lot of other studios, what happens is that that is not a thing that you tend to do. You know, you just tend to listen to the person that's in charge and they get the final say on things. But that's the sense that I get from Embark. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? With a company like that is building something from the ground up, the pressure is there to make something that is swinging for the fences, right? And I think they've done it successfully, but there's also a bunch of examples that haven't done it successfully, right? So yeah, I think there's something there, but it's hard to really distill that down to what that is. I think to me that open, honest, creative discussion that they have, and there's probably something in the hierarchy where it's more flat rather than vertical, is also really helpful. But they have, like McFall is saying, they have some really, really good developer videos for Arc Raiders and how they made it. It's really cool. Actually, I started making the statue myself and it's going well. Wait, you just told us that it wasn't going well. What? But I think because I try to make everything very perfect, it does not satisfy me. Still, I would try to do it myself. Yeah, practice is the enemy, not practice, like perfect is the enemy of good, right? At a certain point, you just have to be okay with what you can do. Especially in your case, if you want to be an environment artist first, the quality of that statue doesn't need to be this like super anatomically correct like statue, and it doesn't need to be like super highly realistic, right? It just needs to serve the purpose of the environment. So at a certain point, you just have to be like okay with the way that it looks now. And what I tend to do is if I find myself stuck in that position where I feel like I'm just being too perfect about something, I will get it into the engine in its current form. And then I will just look at it in the grand scheme of things. Because what happens is that if we work on a singular asset, we oftentimes lose the perception of the environment that we're building, right? We're not building an asset, we're building an environment. And sometimes the asset in that environment can serve its purpose with, let's say, just like a simple tileable texture on it, right? Not in the case of a statue, but let's say for something else, right? So yeah. It is, you gotta keep working on it just as long as it serves the purpose of the environment, right? Because you're not trying to flex your environment. Well, you're trying to flex your environment art skills, not your character art skills, right? Zoe, hello Zoe, good to see you. How are you doing? And good to see you too, Justin. Justin is asking a question. I noticed a lot of studios are hiring senior level positions. Is that a sign that studios are leaning more towards outsourcing for their needs, like set dressing or general modeling? Not necessarily. I think that might also just be a thing where they just need more senior staff, right? That might also be happening. Maybe they had like a couple of people leave and they just need to fill that up as well. I think in general, there is definitely going to be a trend where studios, especially studios in more expensive locations, especially America, is really reconsidering how they do development with smaller in-house teams and bigger outsourced teams. I think that is definitely happening. And I think Europe, to some degree, will follow suit and is already doing that, right? So that's not like a new thing. But I think we might see a bit of a transfer more to where the bulk of the art outsourcing is happening in countries that have cheaper labor, you know, just to lower the costs on development. Now, does that mean that we're not going to see junior positions anymore? No, I think for stuff that has, and this is exactly why I keep bashing my head and keep reminding everyone that storytelling is super important. If you're just making good props, That is lovely, but that means that your work is being done by someone else for less money, right? You need to become a part of those core teams within those companies. And that means storytelling, making sure that you have somewhat of a knowledge of level design, and making sure that you can build an environment, right? Because the more that you can ingrain yourself into that core team, the higher likely it is that you will be getting a job in those bigger companies with those core teams, right? Because if you're just doing the assets work, that's fine, but that means that you're either going to be hired by like an outsourcing company, which there are still outsourcing companies and code development studios in Europe as well, but you basically set yourself up for for the thing that you put on your portfolio, right? And we're going to be talking about that in just a second. It's like a good ratio for detail. I guess more a question for design in general. In general, there's like the 80-20, 70-30 rule, right? Where 70% is rest and then 30% is detail. I think that's a good way to think about it. And that can go from an environment where if you want to attract a person's attention, the detail should be mostly clustered around like the thing that you want to focus on rather than the rest of the space, right? So it doesn't really only apply to design, it also applies to a lot of other elements that we can infuse into environment art on a daily basis, right? Because let's say if you make your entire environment super detailed and everything has noise, that means that I don't know where to look, and you're not doing a good job of like shepherding me to where I need to be looking, right? But yeah. Right. Let's switch it on over and let's have a look at some portfolios. So let's have a look. Let's move on. Let me just move this here. I need to change some of the OBS settings still. Add the yellow paint in. Arvid, come on. Don't do this to us. Don't do this to us. So it's interesting, right? Like the yellow paint conversation is actually really interesting because the yellow paint is the most common example of how not to do it, but every game does this. I think the yellow paint was just like the example where people started noticing it, which is interesting, right? Because if you look at like God of War or something like that, like every game that is really well built and doesn't talk about the yellow paint, they have the same sort of thinking, they just don't use yellow for it. These reviews are always so inspiring. Let's go! All right, talking about reviews. So for people that are new, I've updated like all these rules here. I'm not going to read through all of them. Let me make sure that we scoot this on over just slightly. Let me make sure that something like this. There we go. Right. 4 things: hireability, presentation, artistry, and technique. And obviously doorbell ringing. Sorry, give me a sec. Oh, okay. We are back. We are back. Sorry about that. Just had a delivery come in. Yeah, don't do yellow paint, but most of my friends don't even see it. It's like they have a visual filter for it. Yeah, and honestly, I don't think that a lot of people care about it necessarily. It just became a meme, right? But I think there's also the counter argument that I would love to go back to a place where we can trust the player more, and that we don't have to handhold them every step of the way, right? Yeah, that's a conversation for another time. So let's get back to this. So 4 sections: hireability, presentation, artistry, and technique. And then for the first person we are going to be looking at is Sergu. So Sergu has the goals of machine games and Decagon, which is interesting. I had to have a quick look at what Decagon is doing these days. I mean, I kind of know what machine games is doing, right? But I just found it interesting that there are already, let's say, machine games is like, yeah, let's say environment art specialization, where Decagon, it feels more caring towards, sure, they do also do codev, but I think it's more catering towards actually making like sellable packs and stuff, right? And those are like 2 separate branches of video games. But let's have a look. Let's have a look and see. So, Sergu, environment artist from Romania, a passionate self-taught 3D artist currently focusing on creating environments for games. Good modeling skills, experience in creating textures for assets and making tileable materials, a good understanding of hard surface material techniques and efficient workflows, basic knowledge of Unreal, all of this stuff. That is like CV material, right? I wouldn't write that here. I would just tell me what you're passionate about, right? Passionate self-taught 3D artist currently focusing on creating environments for games. Cool. But what else? Give me a little bit of flavor about what you want to do, right? And who you are as a person. Because this is all just like really boring to read through, and that's not what anyone is going to read through on your description, right? I would make this like nice and digestible on your CV instead. That's what I would do. Let's have a look. Let's even have a look. You don't even have a CV here, which is definitely a recommendation that I would give. Add a CV here, making sure that you have something that people can save as a document, right? And that people have access to. Because there's a lot of information that I'm not getting here that would be relevant to a hiring manager. For example, what's your education like? Even if it's you're self-taught, right? But even letting me know like what you did before, it can give me like an interesting glean into what you want to do or what your background is. Did you work somewhere else before? You know, like, do you have like work experience, like anything at all? All those kind of things are like really important to still show off. So have a CV here as well. Cool. And then we'll have a quick glance at the LinkedIn as well. Currently focusing on hard surface modeling. Open to work. Show details. I'm immediately missing a link to your portfolio, right? Because how do I verify if you are ready to be hired if I don't even have a link to your portfolio here? Maybe there's a... No, there's none in here, right? So if you link a LinkedIn account to what you have on your ArtStation, make sure that it's filled out to at least to where I can see that you take this stuff professionally and that I can reach out to you if I need to, right? So I would say there's a lot of stuff missing there that can be filled out. It doesn't take too long of a time, right? It can be like pretty straightforward and pretty, I don't know. It doesn't have to be like wowing, you know? Like there's a lot of tools that you can use now to like help you with this. So I would definitely fill out your portfolio and your profile more because this is just not going to be enough, right? This is the most This is honestly like the worst way of presenting your CV at all, because this is just like a wall of text, and I can guarantee you that no one's gonna read this. Yeah. Cool. So have a CV, make it a one-pager, add everything that you see here, add that in there, and then make this little summary more about like what you've done so far, what you're passionate about, your favorite game, like something like that, you know? Like give me something that is, give me like a little bit of a view into who you are. Let's have a look at the portfolio stuff then. Right. Okay. There's some cool little stuff here. I would say that immediately the thumbnail here being cut off is just like really annoying to me already, right? But we'll get to that in a second. This weapon is pretty cool. I like what I'm seeing for the rest of it. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna jump to the oldest work that you have. Right. We can see some baking issues and all that kind of stuff happening here. Some hard edges, which is not too great. And the reason why I do this, right? The reason why I jump to the oldest thing is because this is an indication that you might want to clean up your portfolio and only make it about the best stuff that is available in your portfolio, right? If I see this and then we scroll down to where I see like really hard like baking issues, and you know there's a lot of detail in the texture that could be added, is this the best way that you can showcase your work, right? Like, is it the best that you can do when it comes to hard surface modeling? Because that's the thing that you always have to keep in mind, right? If you put this forward, people will assume that it's your portfolio, which means that this should contain your best work. If it doesn't belong in your portfolio. And also, this is also the first indication that we are missing some breakdowns, you know? This is just like, oh, here's the pretty pictures, and the rest of it, you don't need to care about that, you know? And usually when that happens, when I don't see... I think the perception can easily become, or the assumption can easily become, oh, there's no breakdowns. There's going to be some horrible stuff that they're not showing to me, right? Because it's always safer for a company or like a hiring manager or a recruiter to expect the worst than it is to assume the best, right? And if then you don't see any breakdowns or anything like that, I know that there's probably going to be texture breakdowns in the Marmoset viewer, right? But that's not the only thing that I care about, you know? Give me like a nice viewer topology in an image, and also showcase to me that you can also take care of the different texture sets, how many textures that you use, like what's the textile density, what's the final poly count, like break it all nicely down into something that's easily digestible, right? Because yeah, the topology doesn't look too bad. There's probably a case that could be made for like breaking down like some of these smaller things potentially, depending on viewing angle. Nah, it's not too bad actually. Plus also you probably want like more detail in like a first person weapon, because you're always gonna have it like this close to the camera, right? So yeah, that does make sense. I think topology wise this is fine. But I don't think that I was concerned about like the topology. I was more concerned about like the baking issues that we're seeing. So yeah, I think this is a case where some of these things, I'm assuming that we can just like cut them off and just leave them in the dust, right? We've grown way much. We've grown way much more than this. So we need to showcase that we have grown and that this is no longer relevant to your portfolio, right? Because this stuff doesn't look too bad, but I would assume that if I look at this This is also from 2 years ago. Let's have a quick look. 2 years ago as well. Yeah, I would be curious to see you do this now with all the experience that you brought to the table with creating your environments. I want to see what is going to happen there. Same thing here, right? It feels, first of all, I think the detail on the item itself is like pretty interesting, but this feels like a really old model that doesn't belong on your portfolio anymore. The presentation is pretty lackluster, you know, it's pretty basic. I think the texturing is pretty basic as well. Like there's no sense of like wear and tear, or I don't know, no interesting dirt or dust or aging happening on the asset at all. So that can definitely be improved. Let's see, we're gonna skip through some of these things really quickly. Just having a quick look, because you can see that for the most part, the posts are really similar, right? It's like, oh, here's a pretty picture, but then I don't care about like showing the actual game art stuff, right? And that's what we want to see, right? We want to see you break this down. Like, were you smart with the way that you laid this out into your UV? Were you smart with the way that you set up the materials? Are they dynamic? Can I change the colors? Like anything like that that makes them more flexible for game development purposes, right? So make sure to show those things off. Because it can't just be about pretty pictures. It needs to be about like the way that you constructed things. That is going to be really important. I think honestly, these 3 posts can honestly just be like a singular post. If you then add like a bunch of breakdowns on top of it, I think we're in a good position. But yeah, these don't need to be like 3 separate posts. They can literally just be like a couple of images with like a couple of breakdowns and then showcasing like the prop that you like the most. Because it's also one of those things where it's quality over quantity, right? So don't just think that you need to add more images to a post, because that is not going to work. It's about showing less images, but more informative and more impressive images, right? It's quality over quantity. All right, we're seeing some. This is interesting from a texture perspective, right? We're getting some more detailed texturing going on. We're seeing some wear and tear making it into the assets. So that is starting to be like really interesting to have a look at. And I think the textures are like pretty detailed as well. They still feel like a little bit too clean. You know, it's about really making those like stamped letters stand out with like a little bit of an edge wear, with a little bit of like an inset color, like all those little details, right? But I think this is getting into like a really interesting place where, yeah, this is starting to look like pretty good. I think I am still missing storytelling, right? That's gonna be a thing that I will hammer on with every prop that I see. If you are showcasing like this weapon, maybe showcase it in like this like open state on a plate like this, but make it someone's like workbench, you know? Make it someone's workbench where they're disassembling the weapon and you can maybe see like individual components or like weapon, like other guns like on the back of it, right? That doesn't mean that you need to make like a bunch of other weapons, but you can make the focal point yourself, and then the set dressing around it can be other things in the scene, right? Or like other things from like megascans or an asset pack that you downloaded or something like that. So think about the storytelling in the scene. Like try to tell me a story. It's not just about the prop, it's about the story that is involved with the prop, right? So yeah. My first level art project, which I'm quite happy with the result. During this project, I've learned and improved on various skills and techniques, making foliage assets from scratch, scattering and using displacement, and the scene was made in Rendition 5.4.1. The course I've been following to get this result was made by Emil Slegers. Okay, cool. This is a slight tangent. If you want to shout out someone, you can just link to their profile, right, and credit them that way. But that's like slightly beside the point. Again, pretty pictures only, right? So this might look cool, but this is not gonna get you hired because I don't know how you approached it. I don't know how smart you are with the materials, and I can guess, but if I have the choice between guessing what you did or someone else showing me what they did, I'm gonna go for the person who showed me what they did rather than keeping me guessing, right? So those breakdowns, they are really, really important. I want to see you go through the paces. I want to see your artistic process. I want to see how you kept the performance of the game in mind and all those things, right? Those are really important. Like the modularity of these roofs, like how did you approach them? How smart were you with the textures of these like roof tiles? You know, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can show off here that is just not really being shown off, right? So it's kind of a shame. It's kind of a shame. Yeah, for people that are new to the chat, feel free to ask any questions in the meantime, right? Just a simple reminder that if yeah, like Jashiel is saying, isn't uploading tutorial work a big no-no, right? Here's an interesting thing. I think you uploading tutorial work is not necessarily a big no-no. However, there's just barely any value in it, right? Because what I would say is you could potentially say like, hey, I made this from a tutorial from Emil Schlegers, right? So let's have a look. So if we have a look at the actual tutorial, if we can find it. Doo-doo-doo. Because I can't really find a tutorial that is 100% like that, right? Because, for example, it's on his website, Fast Track Tutorials. Okay, let's have a look. Hey, there we go. Okay, so here, this is interesting, right? If you 100% recreate something like this doesn't add value, right? Because you are just taking someone else's work and you are just like following the steps, but that doesn't showcase that you can actually do the work yourself, right? And that's the thing that you need to showcase, right? Like Justin is saying, most studios can spot tutorial work easily. If you lie about it, that's a big no-no. Yeah, 100%. Like I've caught people in an interview lying about tutorial, and that was immediately done with the conversation. Like at that point, we still kept on talking, right? But there were moments where I said that like, okay, they use a tutorial. I don't think we even need to go to like the next interview rounds because they just used tutorial and they lied about it, right? And that is just, you're trying to take a shortcut and you're trying to not do the hard work and then lie about doing the hard work, right? And if you get into the games industry, it is freaking hard work. So that's what we want you to do, right? So getting back to this, if we then have the comparison here where you have this Japanese environment and you follow the tutorial, link the tutorial here, right? Don't try to hide it. Be really open with it. And then I can be like, okay, you followed the tutorial. Cool. Then the addition or the interest that I want to see is how did you follow that tutorial and how did you make it your own, right? Because if you follow a tutorial, there's nothing necessarily bad with it, but I want to see you use that knowledge and put it to your own thing. So yeah, that's what I would say. There's nothing wrong with tutorials, but I want to see what you do with those tutorials rather than you just following a tutorial. So yeah. So that's it. Like, and again, there's no breakdowns here. right? So there's nothing really of value again that I can see. Like maybe you decided to approach it in a different way or something like that, right? But I want to see the breakdowns. Breakdowns. That's what I want to see. And then this is where it gets interesting, right? Because the following work is all going to be challenge work, right? Which if you look at your challenge work, the most value that you get from doing challenges is showcasing that you can work under time pressure, but usually they are not the best showcase of the final result because of that time pressure, right? So they're in case of our team challenges, for example, they're a good showcase that you can work under time pressure, you can work within a team, you have source control, and that you can work with others to fulfill like one that you can fulfill like one collaborative project, right? However, they are not in a lot of cases they are not a good showcase of what you can do on an individual level when you have the time to spend in crafting something yourself, right? So keep that in mind. Those challenges, they show something interesting to add on your portfolio, but it's not the same as making your own portfolio work, right? So that's why if you have like a bunch of really interesting portfolio work and then you add the team challenges on it, then we are rounding off your skill set because you're showcasing something else than just portfolio work, right? So keep that in mind. We're going to quickly scan through these because these are our team challenges, so I kind of know what happened here. You made some cool assets. Again, how did you go about making these assets, right? It is showcasing like, hey, this is the kit, this is how I decided to approach it, and this is how the final thing came together, right? Again, no breakdowns here. It's such a shame because these environments are like really good, right? This is tutorial work, so we're gonna ignore that. But like these environments are really good. I just want to see the game art. There's nothing here for me to have a deeper dive into. Oh, okay. So in this case, he used modularity and he used it in the correct way, and then he used like RGB masking to add like details on it. Like, how did he craft like this big wall decal, right? Like, is something interesting happening there? Okay. There's nothing really. I can't really discuss something like this in depth, and there's nothing really that if I were to put you in a production pipeline, I am missing all the things that I want to see from a proper game artist portfolio, right? So let's go back. Hireability at this point, if you're leaning purely on the visuals, right? Because that's what we're doing, it is pretty low. Also, think about the beginning of when we were looking at your portfolio. No CV, a wall of text that was supposed to be your CV, but that's not professional, right? That's no one's gonna read that. Your LinkedIn wasn't filled out. It didn't link to your ArtStation. There's no way for me to get like some additional, I don't know, information about yourself, right? About what you're passionate about, what your skills are in a deeper manner, what your work experience has been like up until this point. Yeah, just your CV, right? There's nothing for me to really latch onto. The artistic work is decent, right? But we're definitely we're missing game art. We're not here to make pretty pictures. We're here to make functional art for a game, right? So making pretty pictures is one part of it. And sure, as artists, we often think that that's like the most important part, but we also make it performant and we also make it usable for a game, right? So yeah, that's like the biggest thing. So a missing CV, there is no way for me to get a deeper understanding of who you are. And what you bring to the table, right? To the table. So let's see. I think the presentation overall is decent, right? I think it really suffers from just like having the old work on here, trying to bloat your portfolio with these 3 posts that basically show the same asset pack, right? And then this is a slight thing, right? These banners here, just make it consistent, right? Making consistent through your whole portfolio. Make sure that you pay attention to all this extra work, right? The presentation is where you get to put the little details into how seriously you take yourself and how seriously others should take you. So take care of it. Take it seriously. So presentation, let's see. There's a lot of old work there. The thumbnails are not as well laid out as I want them to be. So yeah, we're gonna go for like a pretty low score here. I think the artistry itself is okay, but I can't get a really deep insight into it, right? And then the techniques, honestly, there's nothing really for me to like glean into the techniques, right? Like there's no showcase of game art at all, right? So yeah, that's what we're missing, right? Anurad is asking, how do I showcase that I have functional art? And also, sorry for the other people that have asked questions before. We'll get to them in just a second, but this question is relevant, right? So how do I showcase functional art? With game art, what you want to showcase is, for your props, let's say, how many textures did you use? How are your UVs laid out? How many polys did it have? How did you decide to pack your textures? How did you decide to, for your environment art pieces, how did you decide to share resources between things, right? Did you work with a tileable before? Did you work with a tileable as like a base and then use vertex painting to then, I don't know, reuse that tileable in the same way? How did you set up your collisions for your assets? Is the game environment, is it even walkable, right? That's the sort of stuff that we have to do as game artists, and there's nothing of it here. This is just pretty pictures. There's no functionality behind it, right? Different shaders and lighting complexity viewports in Unreal Engine 5? Not necessarily, because think about this, right? So lighting complexity, that is usually done by a lighting artist, right? I am talking about like environment art, and lighting art is like a specific category on the side. So usually I don't care about like lighting complexity if I want to hire you for your environment art skills, right? And sure, you can potentially show off different shaders if they are impressive, right? If you've done a lot of good work on making your own shader setup for something, that's good. If you just made a master material where you can swap out like some textures here and there, everyone does that. That's boring. I don't want to see it. So yeah, if you spend a lot of hard work and effort and you can present it really nicely, right? Because that's also a thing, then you have a winner on your hands, right? That's a good portfolio project. So let's see. Yeah, that ends up with an average score of 2.75. I think a lot of it gets dragged down by just not showing the techniques, not taking extra care to put in the extra effort in just your presentation and who you are and your CV and all that kind of stuff, right? And also, if we look at this, right? So again, as a last thing, no, not Epic Games. I want to do Epic Pen instead. So the last thing that I really want to highlight here. Where's my pen? Oh, there it is. So if we're going to do this, we are going to be pretty brutal here, right? This is old. It's not well presented. I don't think it does you anything good in showcasing like how good your asset work is, because some of this is like pretty outdated. It lacks the details that I would expect, right? So these I would love to see you like revamp them or something like that, or make a prop that is better, right? This prop is kind of okay, but I want to see it better presented and maybe do a little bit of storytelling, right? If you do something like that, that's already good to have in your portfolio. This, because it's a tutorial and you've not deviated from the tutorial, I don't think it's worth adding on your portfolio. Coming back to that point. These guys, they are bloat for your portfolio, right? So these 3 objects or these 3 projects, they can literally just be like a single project that again, missing the game art stuff, right? Show me the breakdowns. Show me how your favorite prop, how you decided to texture that, and how big the texture resolution is, your texel density, your poly count, all that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, that means that we're in this really difficult position now where you're trying to get most of your hireability, most of your value is trying to come from stuff that you've not done yourself. And you see where it becomes difficult? Right? Because I can only base your value on stuff that is not purely made by you at this point. Well, apart from the gun, maybe, right? But that's not what you want to go for, right? As an environment artist. What did you mean by not being impressed by the thumbnails? Just having like this thumbnail on like a black background is like the most boring version, and everyone else is doing that same thing as well. I want to see how you can potentially like include like a little bit of storytelling, or give me like a little bit of a sense of there's more to this than just this prop, right? You need to sell me the idea that this prop is, for example, this sword. This is a sword of like a Draugr king who's like laying in his tomb, and you know, that's what I want to see. I don't want to see a sword, because everyone can make a sword, but not everyone can make, I don't know, like Smornhold, the sword of like this Draugr king that passed away, right? Show me that. That's interesting. Just a sword? It's pretty boring. And I think it's also, especially when we look at this, the presentation is not that great. The lighting, the prop itself is blending with the background, you know, so that's pretty bad. That's why this one is getting into the right direction. I like where the lighting is going, and it's very well presented. It's interesting by itself, but I want to see a little bit more, right? So that's why this is a question mark. With like a little bit of polish, you can add this to your portfolio and it can be justified to be there. But these ones, they are a tougher sell because they need a lot more work, and it's probably easier to do something from scratch than it is to spend the amount of time it takes to like revamp and like clean up and all that kind of stuff on these ones. But yeah, I hope you see what I'm saying, that it becomes really difficult to hire you at this point because most of the value you're trying to derive from things that is coming from your team-based work, right? But the most important thing is that I want to see you, right? I want to see you as an artist. What do you contribute to the project that I'm hiring you for, right? Because there's one thing about like my old portfolio, right? Outdated as it is, I was head on with what I wanted to show. I didn't care about the micro, right? I didn't care about making props. I wanted to make environments. So all the stuff that I did for my portfolio was all environments, all by myself, not even using concepts, and I was trying to come up with my own ideas, right? Sure, there's a lot of trial and error, and I wasted a bunch of time trying to do it that way, so I don't think it's the ideal way. But what I'm trying to say is that my portfolio, it showcased that like, hey, look, this is what I want to do. This is who I am. Right? Cool. That was pretty intense, Sergu. But I think sometimes that's needed, right? If you have any follow-up questions about this, feel free to ask me anything in the DMs on Discord. You know where to find me. And then, yeah, let's help you out to get to the next step. And thank you for sharing your work. I really appreciate that. Cool, let's go to some questions in the chat, because Lily asked a question, how about people who follow a course like from Enhance? I don't know who Enhance is, but let's have a look. When I see posts on ArtStation, they all look exactly like the example. It's the same thing, right? The same principle applies to a course or to, I don't know, to a course or tutorial or whatever. It is nice that you can showcase following the steps. But what I want to see is what makes you you, right? Like, how did you decide to then take those learnings that you have, and how did you decide to make your own thing with it, right? That is the most important thing always. Because that happens at university too, right? Like even the university that I went to, that has like really good ratings, you can definitely recognize some of the work from the earlier students, and then later down the line they make more their own thing, right? But the first 2 years, everyone kind of makes the same thing, so it's very recognizable. So it almost has no value because you just know that it's like following the steps, right? So yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. Because yeah, that's also, by the way, if we're elaborating on that point a little bit, that's also where the value of an artist kind of comes from the same background, right? Because there are artists that you see out there where we know that they are artists, and you cannot say that they are artists because then the company that has made the artist is gonna be more recognizable, and people can then prepare for the artist, which is also not the purpose, right? So usually those companies will ask you to not reveal that it was an artist, but we know. We know. Does it add value to the project if someone makes a project just based on their PureRev board and their ideas, not any tutorial and modeling and texturing all the assets themselves, no megascans? Well, yeah, sure. I want to say you can use tutorials, and you can use tutorials for things that you don't know about, right? You just don't want to follow the tutorial step by step and then have the exact same outcome as the tutorial. I think that's the most important thing, right? I use tutorials on a day-to-day basis when I'm working on art. That's fine. You know, if let's say you want to do something new, you can do that by bashing your head against the wall, or you can look for the information that's freely available and just do that instead, right? So, yeah. How often do you do the streams? I am here on Wednesday evenings and Friday at noon. So, twice a week. Given the market conditions, will it be okay to put artwork related to weapons, foliage, vehicles, and not limiting to game environment art stuff? You are not going to have the time to make all of those different things to a degree that you're hireable. That's the issue. Because if you are trying to be a master of all, right? Like if you try to master like all those components, you're going to be a master of none. Because none of those individual things are good enough for me to then hire you, right? That's why I will always be adamant about showcase what you want to do. If you like weapons, or you like foliage, or you like vehicles, pick one of them, right? And become the vehicle person, or become the foliage person. Whereas if you're just going to be like, hey, I'm going to be a 3D generalist and I want to get into AAA, that is not going to work. It's just not. It is just not. Creating just one demo version of a game as a solo designer and developer for portfolio versus creating 4 to 5 projects on a specific domain. Which way increases the chances of getting hired? So this is more about like making games, right? Which if you're making your own games, so I specifically talk about like AAA, right? Like getting into a big established company. If you're then talking about like making your own games, that is completely different, right? Because if you were to do, well, in general, what you have to do for AAA is specialize, right? So you can't design your own game and then hope to get into, I don't know, a studio like Riot, let's say. Right? That's not going to help your chances. Because you've, again, the same thing that I just said, right? You tried to do everything, but a company, like a big company out there, doesn't want to hire you to do everything. They want to hire you to do a very specific job, right? My job as an environment artist is visual storytelling, right? I, most of the time, don't even create my own assets. I am specialized in telling stories and building stuff in the world that is using pre-existing things, right? Do I occasionally build stuff myself? Yeah. Do I get to do it all the time? No. Because that's not what the game needs, right? Especially when you're working on an open world game, at a certain point, let's say you have like a massive landscape, you are not going to be the person who's sculpting the landscape over and over and over until the end of the game, because at a certain point, the landscape needs to be done for other people to then build stuff on top of the landscape, right? So you cannot be a landscape sculptor on a project like that, because that is just not what the project needs. So same thing here. If you want to get into AAAs, you need to focus up, right? Like focus on a specific niche that is going to be applicable to games. Ashish is asking, doesn't Decagon hire freshers? I actually don't know who they hire. I'm assuming so, but I've also heard that. I actually don't know if this is true, but so this is my perception of what Decagon does, right? Because most of the people that I know that work with Decagon have worked with Decagon for like years and years and years, right? So this might not be current information. What I assume they do is they constantly keep an eye out on their own personal Discord for people that have like really good artistic insight and they make like really good props, then onboard them into making a couple of asset packages. If they do really well, then they transfer them over to one of the teams that is working on like their core developments, like the code of projects that they do. That is potentially the way that I see things going inside of a company like that. That would make the most sense to me. Because they have a lot of flexibility when it comes to making their own like asset packages, right? And that is a good training ground to get you used to like all the specific things that they do before they then put you on like client work, right? Because client work, if you work for a different company, has a bigger responsibility than just doing asset packages, right? Should the focus be different for a single A or large indie versus AAA? In general, what you want to focus on is bigger studios will be specialized. Smaller studios will highly likely be more generalized, right? The difference there is that even with a generalized portfolio, you are not expecting to do environment art, character art, VFX, I don't know, all that kind of stuff, right? You still want to showcase that you are really good at making an environment and that you can also potentially make some other stuff too, right? Yeah. Unless if it's like a really, really small company and it's just like, hey, look, you're going to be the only artist on this project and you're going to have to do everything. Sure, but then usually those things don't get executed to the same sort of quality degree that, let's say, a larger company does, right? So that might mean that you have to do simpler art styles, like let's say flat colors or like a low poly or some art styles like that, right? But yeah, it is very much you get to decide where you want to go, and that direction is based purely on your portfolio, right? So if you showcase, hey, look, I can make really highly detailed weapons, your focus is going to be more AAA stuff. Versus like, hey, I don't know, what could be a good example? This is the thing that I don't specifically know too much about, right? Because my assumption here is that where the smaller companies, they usually don't have the budget to like fly you over or like hire you remote anyway, right? So they are more restricted when it comes to hiring you locally, right? So location has more of an impact in getting you hired into a smaller company compared to a larger company, right? An EA is going to have no issues with spending like a couple of grand flying you over and like moving you, all that kind of stuff, compared to, I don't know, let's say a team that's making their first like small game, right? Right, okay. We are going to jump over to Ashish. Ashish wants to be an environment artist in CD Projekt Red or in Remedy. Okay, cool. Let's have a look. So you are a freelance 3D environment artist. Love to see it. Game environment artist focusing on building atmospheric realistic worlds in Unreal. I strongly believe that a solid process defines the end result, so my workflow emphasizes research, block out, modular planning, material creation, servicing, and iterative refinement to ensure both visual quality and performance. I enjoy crafting believable, cultural, grounded spaces and bring my persistent and iterative process to every project. Okay, we are going to cut out this section here. And I think just having that section at the end, that is going to be more interesting to read than just this stuff that a lot of people are saying, right? Tell me what you enjoy. And then where it becomes really strong, right, is where you say this and then you show something like that project that you have here, right? Because I can see you putting the words into actions, right? That is powerful. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for not only a person who says like, hey, look, I love making weapons, and then most of the portfolio is character art, right? That doesn't work. I want to see that you really believe what you say here, right? So I think that's good. I would just focus more on the second part here and condense this all up. Make it really quick to read, make it really interesting. That's all you need. This is basically the hook of who you are, right? So make it really short. Yeah. Let's have a look. So let's first go to the About page. You have a demo reel. Interesting. You don't see that too often in games. It's not that that's a bad thing. We just don't see it that often. Let's have a look in a second. Let me make sure that there's no really revealing personal data here. So give me just a sec. I should have honestly just done this because the other thing doesn't have my mic into it. Okay, let me do something here. We need to block some stuff out. Okay, cool. Let's switch it over. Demo reel is just a combination of the Varasani project videos. Yeah, I assume as much. In that case, it's not really a demo reel, right? But we'll get to that in just a second. Cool. So your CV. Let's actually check here. This is the same thing as the introduction. That's cool. The rest of it speaks for itself. Let's have a look at the CV. So, game environment artist in New Delhi, India, which is cool. I love it. You got your email here, which I'm assuming is going to be the same email here. So that's not going to be, yeah, that's open to the public, which is good. All of this are links, which is also nice to see. Taking extra care of those things, which is good. They're nicely annotated. I craft believably, culturally grounded environments and enjoy solving both artistic and technical challenges to create convincing worlds. Cool. I believe that's that a solid process defines the end result, so my workflow emphasizes research. This is basically the same thing that you're saying on your little summary, right? Which is not necessarily that bad of a thing, but yeah, it just feels more generic, right? Because everyone is doing research, a block out, modular planning, material creation. That's what everyone is doing. So I feel, again, like maybe make it a bit more personal about yourself. Yeah. My personal project, Varasani. My personal Varasani environment project shaped how I work today. Oh, we lost YouTube. Okay, let me refresh that. What's happening here? Okay, I think we're back. God. Cool. So basically that Varasani project said that that's how I shaped how I work today, as I take the time to plan environments creatively, carefully, and stay persistent through challenges. It's good. I don't necessarily mind it that much. Personal art projects, self-employed, which is interesting. I wouldn't describe your personal work as self-employed unless you're maybe trying to build a business out of it, right? Yeah, that's what I would say. Like, because you making personal work is not necessarily being employed, right? So this feels weird. This is basically trying to like oversell yourself to a degree, because I read this and I'm just like, okay, yeah, all students are self-employed then. That's not the way that works, you know? Let's see. You worked for a studio for 2 years, which is good. And then you link to... Oh, wait. Let's open this in a new tab. Oh, boo. Link is broken. So this is interesting, right? Like, I want to check this out because I want to see what you did. And it's totally fine if this is professional-based work, right? Even if you don't think that the quality standards or the visual quality is up to snuff, it is a showcase that you worked on a game that is in an engine and that you worked in a team. So I would definitely, I don't know what the project is, but I would definitely think about like re-adding that, right? If you can, of course. Design a model to add your 3D artist, 3D models for advert in Blender. That's cool. Think Tank Training Center. So you've just finished that. Congratulations. And then asset creation for film or games. Oh, interesting. For film or games. Oh. Take experience where you can. Well, yeah, but like this experience is not really experience, you know? Like that doesn't count as experience. But this definitely does. This definitely does. It's just a shame that we can't see it, right? Let's see. And then we have your software proficiency, which is good. I personally always feel, this is the way that I always approach it. I want to see how good you are in it, and you want to make it as simple as possible, right? So let's call it like proficient and basic, right? Because then immediately I know that you're really good at Unreal Engine, but you're maybe not as good in Unity, right? That's what I would do. McFall is saying, I always found those dots or ratings under skills confusing. Hard to know what they actually represent in terms of a skill level. Yeah, and I 100% agree. I used to have those on my CV as well. And I found myself thinking about the exact same thing, and that's why I removed them. Because if you are saying texturing 5 stars, does it mean that you are as good as the best in the industry? Probably not, right? So it's really hard to quantify this stuff. I would just say something that is, you know, just again, proficient and basic understanding, right? Because then I immediately know like, okay, they can do a tree if they needed to, but they're really good at modular kits, right? And if you, maybe if you want to have some like better separation, it's like proficient, intermediate, or basic or something like that, right? So that you have like a bit more of a gradient. I don't think that you need anything more than that. I think those skills you should see in his breakdowns and on his portfolio. Yes, you should. This is interesting, right? Because what you say on your CV needs to be backed up by stuff that you show on your portfolio, right? So you're absolutely right, Galazar. And we're going to get into that in just a second, right? Because I had a look at it already, and I think there's some exciting stuff happening on your CV, on your portfolio. So yeah, we will definitely have a look in just a second. Yeah, I would say don't do like the bullet point thing. I think it's quite confusing. Doesn't tell me anything. I would just make it like, hey, look, these are my skills where I'm like really good at. These are the skills where I'm like basic at, you know? Make it really clear, really easy to understand. But yeah, that is cool. It's good to see. It's nicely laid out. It's very clear to read. The summary is really good as well. I like the structure of it, you know? It's nothing that exciting, but like a CV oftentimes really doesn't need to be, right? It just needs to be functional. So I think this is good. You made that project public. Let's have a look. Is that on your main CV now? Yeah, there it is. Okay. Cool. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. Right. Let's actually have a look then. So let's talk about this first thing, because this is your professional environment. This is your professional work, right? Studio Olamingus. Cool. And it is also as a game, it is there. The thing that I would do to separate this from your personal work is now we need to think about like how we're going to do the thumbnail, right? So for example, here you have like this really cool like icon for your Varanasi, scene, right? I would do something like a little logo where it just says like studio work, you know? And I think that is all you need to like separate it out from like, hey, look, this is studio work. So I didn't have creative control, but it is to showcase that it is still relevant to like working within a team, right? Because sometimes like you might not necessarily be proud of like the end result and the final visual art, but you have worked on a finished game, which also adds a lot in terms of you've gone through the whole cycle and you've worked on a fully finished game, right? What you could potentially do is you say, hey, this is the way that I approach things, right? When I would send my portfolio to people that were going to be having a look at it, I would send them to the tab personal work, and then they could check out professional work. So I was very deliberate with how I set up my portfolio because my personal work was what I wanted to do. That was 100% what I wanted to do. And my professional work was more like, hey, this is what I can do already, you know? So you can do something like this where you just have like a little tab here. You call it professional work. You add them only there. And then you just send them your portfolio link as the initial portfolio, right? So that they land on your portfolio. They land on like the most impressive stuff. And then they continue to click to your professional work. And even if it's not as impressive, they know that you can do impressive work already, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to manage expectations a little bit with those two steps, right? Cool. Right, so let's have a quick look here. I mean, there's not going to be too much to say about this, right? This is all professional work. Ooh. That's weird. But this is cool though. Like it is old school. It is a little bit weird. It's a little bit out there, but I don't know. It's still cool to showcase some of this off. Yeah, that is interesting. Okay. So let's have a look. Actually, let's have a look here. Yeah, so you kind of already do this, right? So you have your portfolio tab, which is just like, hey, this is the stuff that I'm good at, right? And then you have like all your portfolio stuff. So that is good. I can see that you're already self-selecting and that you realize that like this stuff from Think Tank that you've made and this stuff that you made before might not be as good. That is good, right? So if you just send companies your portfolio link, that is a good way to do that already. I like that. Let's go through some other stuff then. This is a weird one, right? Because this is like a 3-week texturing assignment, but this is for films and games. So, well, I'm assuming that was for films and games, right? Because you did that other course. Yeah. I'd use those creepy eyes for a preview for this one. Yeah, potentially. Potentially, like make it really weird, you know? Make it interesting to look at. But yeah, this one, it looks okay-ish. It's 4 years ago, you know, so it's a bit older. But this is definitely more for like films, right? So it's not that relevant. I'm expecting to see like the use of UDIMs and all that kind of stuff, which is not really that relevant to games. So that would be something to take into account. Yeah, and that's also like film stuff. So we're just going to skip through that, right? Because it's not necessarily game art related. And you realize that as well. That's why the portfolio tab is there, which is good. It was really hard to approach the scene in a modular way. Oh, yeah. Yeah, something like this, you don't even need to make modular. It's more just about being very smart with reusing materials, right? Because some scenes, they don't really make sense to make modular anyway. Okay. And now we get into your actual portfolio, right? Like what you want to showcase. I like what I'm seeing. There are some like really interesting story bits, right? This is like an old video cam recorder with just like a child just painting like a bunch of stuff on top of it, which is pretty interesting. It gives me an idea to what's behind it, right? I think you can drive this much further by then also making it like, I don't know, it's in a child's room or something like that, or it's on top of like those old playmats that I had as like a kid, where you can drive the cars on top of and that kind of stuff. You can do something really cool, and especially if you use what you say in your description to your advantage, right? Where you say, I want to make culturally grounded things. How would this be like culturally grounded in the sense where, let's say this is set in India, right? Like, what would that look like? And give me a sense of how we can embed that into like culture, right? That would be cool. And again, you don't have to make everything yourself, right? You can use megascans and reusable things, because the focus is on the hero prop here. But that is taking the course further again than what we're seeing here, right? So what would we try to do? I would say, before moving on, there was some stuff that I wanted to say about the breakdown. This is the easiest thing that you can do for showcasing your EVs, right? Everyone and their cat is doing this. Do something better, where usually the way that I break things down is you have your asset to the left, and then you have all the information that I need of the asset on the right, right? Your UVs, your textures, poly count, all that kind of stuff on one single image, nicely laid out. That's the way that I would do it. I will probably make some template or something like that, or examples for it, like later down the line. Yeah, I think this is good. This is interesting. I like what I'm seeing. I like the little bit of the storytelling added to it. So this is definitely going into the right direction. I imagine like children play with the camera in the backyard. Yeah, exactly. You can do so much cool stuff with this, right? The basis is there. It's like, okay, how do I really sell the idea that's behind it? This is good. I like that. It was just like the breakdowns were a little bit missing, right? Cool. So this is also think tank. Grass, shrubs, and chimney are taken from the Quicksell Megascans. Cool. Ah, yeah. Excuse me. Breakdowns are missing, right? I want to see how you did this stuff, because now I'm thinking like, okay, there's a lot of wood assets. How did you plan and break down this environment, right? Like, how were you smart with the different things that you made for the scene? Because that stuff is 100% what I want to see, right? It is like, okay, how many different tilables did you use? How did you blend them together? How did you do like this little gradient? Did you do some like smart shader setup? Did you build that yourself? You know, that's the stuff that I want to see. Because again, this is more about the pretty pictures than it is about the breakdown, right? But the breakdown is where the context is. So I want to see that stuff. Let's see. Nah, okay. This little sentence here is very revealing. Even though I created a little story to go with it from the beginning, I basically forgot the story halfway through and the result came out really different. I can tell you can tell. It probably went from something that was a bit more specific to something that is like really generic now. Because I have no clue what's happening here, really, right? It just feels like, oh, it's generic hut with generic boat and generic crate, and I don't know, there's some fish and all that kind of stuff, right? But we're not really getting the idea that this is not a full-on fisher hut, but it's also, I don't know, it's this weird like gray thing at the moment. It doesn't give me a deep insight into who's living here, right? So that's what I'm really missing. Missing the storytelling. Missing the background to it. Timothy a bit biased about the wooden assets, medieval scene reference. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Anything that's wood, come on, show me how it's made, you know? So I'm not really proud of this work, but should I improve it or remove it from my portfolio? That's up to you. I think with a big scene like this, if you really want to make it better, it probably is going to take you quite a long time. And especially if you don't have that fundamental basis that is a story, right? I know that I hammer about a story like a lot here in these streams, but that is literally the thing that is going to carry you all the way through, and it's an anchor that you can use to then build up your scene later on, right? So I would say that if you're not proud of this, I'm leaning more towards like removing it and then building something else that does start with those cultural references and that story that you start out with at the beginning, right? And then really just drive that home, really drive out the story or drive down the story. Yeah. There were a couple of other questions. I think I enjoy making all the assets from scratch. Should I continue to do so or use mega scans? Because making almost everything from scratch for me is sacrificing quality. I have no previous experience. If you have no previous experience, if you're making multiple assets already, that's probably where you're going wrong. Making just one asset from the beginning and making that look really good, I think this is the perfect example, right? Make something like this, add some little storytelling into it, and that is all you need to do. You don't even need to think about like anything else in the scene, and if you want to, add mega scans. But yeah, to come back to your question, Ashish, your portfolio needs to be the showcase of your best stuff only, right? So if you're not happy with it, and this one is by far better than this one, I think it's time to potentially retire this one or think about like what the next step could be, right? Like how you can improve it to be more in line with this. But yeah, now we get to this one, which is really interesting. I had a look at it before. I think this already, you know, the thumbnail of it, really impressive just by itself, and I want to click on this. Compared to something like this, I've seen that before, you know, it doesn't really have a soul. I can tell that it doesn't have a soul from the thumbnail, right? It feels very gray goo, like it doesn't really tell anything. This thing though, really interested in it. Like I want to click on it like almost immediately, right? So great job on that. And I think the whole showcase and just like all the, oh, does this not have like a slider? Can I not skip? What? Our station, come on. But this looks really interesting, right? I have a bunch of questions, you know? Like what happened here, who lives here? There's some stuff that happened. There's like a bunch of questions and it's tingling my brain, right? I'm immediately engaged and I want to know more about this. And that's what you want to create, right? And it's also nice that it is like a fuller environment. And it feels like it could actually be like a part of the world, right? And I feel like that's like really, really well done. So first impressions are really, really good on this. The amount of detail and the amount of stuff that's blending together and how you textured and did research, I can see that, right? So last stream, we talked about, should I share my reference board, right? Should I share my PureRef? I can tell your references by looking at this, right? That's what I want to see. I don't want to see like a stupid mood board with just like your references. I want to see that you used it, and this convinces me that you spend a lot of time looking at references and trying to make it work, right? I can see that, which is what you want. This is cool. I like it a lot. This is really, really nice. Yeah, and I think the main shot, the way that it's contrasted and the way that you did the lighting, it's really well done. There's like a glimmer of like stuff in the background, right? Which is like really, really, really nicely done as well. It gives depth to the scene, which is really cool. So I think, yeah, really well done. Let's dive into the breakdowns. Monochrome, that's interesting to showcase. That's interesting to showcase the values, right? Like if the values are in the right place. Rustam in the chat is saying, I think the wooden house is good. You can make it a little bit polished and make a miniature from it, so you can save a lot of time. Just an idea. Well, but here's the question, right? Like, is it as good as this? And the most important question is, okay, let's say we want to make that wooden house as good as this or better. Can that be done in the same amount of time that it is to build something from scratch? I think you can make something way more interesting in a shorter amount of time than trying to remake an old scene that doesn't have good fundamentals. Because getting that wooden house to the same stage as this scene is going to take a lot of time. I'm not sure what you mean with that question, Jashil. Online resume, website hosted, or offline PDF version, which one works better? You need to have both, right? If people can't find your resume, then what's the point? Right? You send, well, you host your resume online and then you send it over to people when you need to, right? So both. I'm not sure if I'm getting the question right, but that's at least what I think about it. Okay, let's have a look at the breakdown. This is cool, seeing like all the different steps and how you were like, I don't know, I don't think the composition is fitting. Maybe something like this. This is looking nice. And this is cool, right? This is why I love seeing these progress GIFs, because I can see you artistically making changes and visually thinking about like how we can improve the scene, right? Because for example, this section right here, right? Where this facade here is a big block of mostly uninteresting stuff. You can make it interesting by adding like a lot of assets to it, right? You can definitely make that so. Or you can just do this, right? And that is a really interesting, that is why I like these process GIFs, because I can see you thinking about it. You can see that you realize, or you got some feedback, or you got some help from someone else that was like, hey, look, that's a big facade. We need to like break this up. And then the next couple of sections is like, okay, how can we make that even more interesting, right? Because even small stuff like this, where the pillars, they're slightly off angle, but they're not making full use of like their 3D just yet. If we can then zoom in and we go like a couple of slides further, this, where the pillars are like bulging out and it creates like a little bit more of a 3D feel, and it feels immediately way more impressive, right? This is the cool stuff. This is cool to see. Getting some contrast in there, playing around with it. Nice. And this is it, right? This stuff, like, it is relatively easy. And most environments, like, we underestimate this all the time, right? What happens with environment art is that it is relatively easy to get to this point. But from this point on, 36 seconds into like a 55-second video, this is where most of the time is going to go. Really refining everything, really making that sure that all the things are polished, right? Like fixing the lighting, doing multiple renders, fixing the lighting again, and fixing the lighting again. Like, it's just very repetitive, very incremental, trying things out, like trying additional fog, like trying a bunch of stuff until it like clicks at the end, right? And you can see here, the last 10 seconds, the scene doesn't really change that much, right? It is just lighting, and details. That's it. And sometimes that is what polish is, right? Just really going through it, asking feedback of multiple people, making sure, going back and forth, making sure that it's all nice. I think that's really good. Okay. So let's have a look here. You got your cool damage as well. You've got your damage building, which is cool. This is a lot of text, right? What you're asking is, you're asking me to do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the breakdown in your visuals, right? I would make it easier for me to digest how you've done certain things, right? So if you talk about if you talk about like high poly bake was used in like the wood damage, the cornice, and the pillar, maybe separate that out, right? Just have like a little separation where you say like, hey, look, the wood, the high poly is yellow, and that's what we did. Right? This is all high poly. Cool. And then the rest of it is tileable in vertex, right? Make it really clear, make it easily digestible, and give, and this is more polish feedback, right? But give the elements on your page, give them a little bit of space towards the edges. It becomes easier to read already, right? You gotta give every element like a little bit of space and make sure that it's like nicely laid out. But that's more polish, right? I think the most important thing is that I can look at this image and immediately get, oh, this is high poly, that's tileable, cool. I can get it immediately. Same thing happening here as well, right? What I would say is showcase topology in a sense where I can get a sense of the whole scene, right? Or like not the whole scene, but like this whole building. Because now I'm just seeing the sliver, but what if I'm really interested in like another section? And potentially separate it out because it is a big building and you want to be able to showcase, you want to make sure that the information that you add on the breakdown is digestible, right? And if we zoom in, even if we zoom in here, I can't really see what's happening with these steps, for example. Is that like a lot of bevels, or is it just like all the wireframe just like smushing together, right? It's really hard to read the wireframe. So the content that you have here is really, really good, right? And I think the presentation is already pretty good as well. But it's more thinking about like, okay, what information do people want to see? And how can I effectively show it to them? And I think this is not bad, right? This is definitely not bad. I think this is a great start and you're doing some really, really good stuff here. But it's really thinking about like, how can you convey that more effectively? But that is cool. I like it. That is really cool as well. Love these buildings. And then the same thing here, right? Like you showcase like a bunch of really interesting like workflows, right? And how you did them. Not how you did them, but like you showcase a variety of different workflows. But showcase them to me. For example, what I would do here is I would potentially add another image where you say like, hey, look, this is a topology. This is how many polys there have. Like this is how many polys there are in the scene in total. And this is how much a pillar is. And this is how much like this element is. And break it all down into like individual elements, right? So that we can get a better sense of that. And then, for example, with the workflows, make that a single image and just focus on the workflow. And then the next image can be the same building, but it can be focusing on the topology, right? Because I think this is a case where you're trying to cram so much valuable information into one image that it is actually justified to add just like another image and make sure that it's digestible. This is cool. I like it. So you got your decals and your banners. This is all like nicely laid out. I would say I would say that I wonder how we're going to do this with this scene. Let me see. Let me look for some opportunities here. I'm almost thinking that you could take this section, right? Like forget about the pillars, like remove the pillars, but this section, lengthen the floor, right? If that's possible, and use it as a showcase floor, and then put all your assets onto this, because then it's going to tie it into the scene a little bit better, right? I hope that makes sense. So you would basically just extend the floor here and the wall as well. And they would basically say like, hey, look, if I'm going to present my assets, like my assets are going to be here. Right? So, but that would be a way to like elevate these breakdowns a little bit more. And you want to make sure that it's like subtle enough right? But this needs a little bit more polish. It's optional, right? But that's what I would do. Yeah, this stuff is really cool. Just even from this, right? I know that you have used a variety of different workflows, and I think just from these visuals, I can already tell, like, okay, we're really paying attention to not only the house, but also the smaller stuff. So this is really cool to see. Throughout all the rejected blockouts in these backdrops. Okay. This is potentially like less interesting to see. These backdrops were more important as they were closer to the camera. I know that I make fun of like the little spelling mistake there, but I mean, you've seen my streams. I make like a lot of spelling mistakes. But this is interesting. So you separate like the non-important backdrops from the actually important ones. I would honestly just get rid of this slide because this is showcasing that you're okay with just having white box in your scene, which is probably not what you did at the end. Because if you have these backdrops, you might as well just use these ones instead of these ones, you know? That's what I'm wondering. Anyway, let's keep scrolling. This is where some of it, and I know this well enough, right? This is where some of it kind of falls apart because you're focusing more on the general scene, right? Like the individual bricks or steps they could have used with like a sculpt or something like that, right? To make them like really nice. But you're trying to do more with less, which I get it. That's usually my workflow too. But this is where we can see the limitations of it, right? This feels a bit too basic. It was so much to break down that I had to condense it, but you are right. I honestly don't think that the length of a breakdown matters that much. And this is going to be very weird for me to say, but I don't think the length of a breakdown matters as much as the value, right? So if you have a lot of cool stuff that you've done and you present it really well, I am fine with you having like 5 more images, you know? It is more when a person does a breakdown and they have like, oh, here's my roughness, 1 full image. Here's my normal, 1 full image. Here's my base color, 1 full image. That is just like, okay, now you're just wasting my time, you know? But if you do something like this, where you have a lot of really interesting information and you've done a good job of trying to really explain what you've done and how you've done it, I would be very happy to see more images here. I think that's very much justified. Because that stuff is good, right? I like what you're trying to show off there. Yeah, these pieces are like way more interesting than some of these pieces, right? Because you can see the additional detail into it and you really took care of it, which kind of makes me sort of like, I don't know, it's in a whole environment, right? There's only so much you can do. But this kind of makes me sad that you didn't take this additional detail into those steps as well. Because that feels like it's missing. All this stuff is really good. All this stuff is really good. I like that you did like modular damage and all that kind of stuff. The railing uses RGB masking. Really good. You know, you're showcasing all the right stuff. This presentation is fantastic. You can even get like a good sense of the materials, right? Really lovely material work as well. I think this is really good. This is really good. Yep. This makes sense. I would potentially, with stuff like this, I would showcase like how you actually used it, right? Because right now I'm a person with experience, right? I know what you've done here, but you want to make sure that everyone gets it, right? And that you're explaining everything in like a really nice way. So when you're then combining like this element that goes in here, that element goes in there, and then you add like a little bit of paneling on top of it, I would honestly break it down in such a way where it's really easy to understand, as in, this is my base wall, you know? Oh my God, that's so thick. No, don't want to have that either. So let's say you have like your wall number 1, and that is just like your base texture, right? Cool. And then you have wall number 2, which is your base texture plus your interior wall paneling kit, right, that you add on top of it. And then you have your third wall, which is then going to include like some of the bricks, right? And showcasing the progression and showcasing like how you use the different elements into those wall pieces, right? Making it really digestible and easy to read. I think that's going to look fantastic because, again, I love what I'm seeing here, right? And I can understand it, but it's more like making it super easy to understand for everyone. Cool. Really, really good. And then we have in game. What is happening here, huh? Condition issue? Come on. Fix this immediately. We can't ship a game like this. No, but that's to make fun of it. But yeah, I think this is really well done. To be fair, like if we're being realistic about it, like it could be nice to showcase that it is fully walkable and that you've also taken a little bit of your time to like fix up the collisions as well, right? Because this janky movement, honestly, I know what you're trying to showcase, but this is not a good showcase of also taking care of like the collisions and navigation, right? Because that is also one thing that we need to take care of. Quentin is asking, is a GIF or a video, would it be good to show the different layers of details? I think a GIF can be more than enough. I honestly don't think it needs to be a GIF for that specific thing. It can just be an image where you just work with color-coded sections, right? I think that's more than enough. So not everything has to be a GIF, right? Because we also want to take into account that if people, I don't know, if people are on the train and they don't have a lot of bandwidth, that like an image is always going to be way quicker to load than like a GIF or a video, right? For the stairs, I did the high poly, but it did not really show in the bake, and I did not have time to fix it. Yeah, I think it might be one of those things where... So that is an area where I would potentially not even show it. Where is it again? I would potentially not even show it because this just doesn't hold up to the quality that I'm seeing here, right? This stuff is awesome. This stuff is basic. And I think this, again, we want our portfolio to be the reflection of our best work, right? So this happens on your individual artworks, but also happens in this list of images, right? So you don't want to... I don't want to run the risk of you looking at this and just being like, ooh, why did he do it that way? You know? Because that's immediately, it's leaving a bad taste, right? Especially when you don't follow it up with something like this, where you did take care of it, right? So for now, I would honestly remove it, right? Because if we go to the scene itself, it looks okay. It looks functional, right? If we look at this stuff, you're not spending a whole bunch of time looking at it. And you then add like additional decals and grime and all that kind of stuff on top of it too, which is good. But that might be a case where, maybe it doesn't need to be here, right? So really picking like the highest quality stuff that you can show off and making sure that it's visible. But yeah, this is really good. I really like this project overall. I feel that most of the stuff that we talked about was more just little cherries on top rather than really functional stuff that was wrong with it, right? So this looks really great. I like what I'm seeing. Again, great stuff on getting this done. So yeah, good stuff, Ashish. There is one thing that I made a note of before we had a look at this. And you have a breakdown here, right? I think this might be a case where, well, first of all, this is not really a breakdown necessarily. This is a showcase. And I'll explain the difference, right? Because what you're doing here is you're just showcasing like, yeah, this is how I done stuff. Maybe this is breakdown. This gets into breakdown territory. But a lot of this stuff up here feels, I mean, maybe I'm splitting hairs a little bit, but yeah. I would say that if you're doing a lot of this stuff already in the main post, right? This is what I expect from a breakdown. Whereas some of the stuff that we're seeing in here feels like it could belong more in what I would expect in the other post, right? So let's actually put them side by side. Can I like put this here somewhere? Nah, fuck it. Let's put them side by side. Right, so what I would say is where... Oh, I think this is just the same thing now. No, it's not. What I would want to see in your main project is this kind of stuff, where you go over the textures and how you created them, right? I love the way that you laid it out. I think that's really good. And what I would then do is, this is more breakdown related, right? So this is breakdown, that is breakdown, and then, I don't know, some of the stuff in here can remain in this post. But if I were to summarize what I'm thinking is that for really nerdy stuff, like the really in-depth stuff, you then have your breakdown post. And then for more surface level stuff, but like how you quickly approach things or how you approach your materials, that is more your main post. So yeah, that's the way that I would approach it. So all this like really cool in-depth stuff, I would add that in your breakdown post and really go and dive deep into it, right? Because also the way that I'm thinking about this is you have your main project, and if I then click on your breakdown, then I'm already invested in finding out how you did stuff. And if you then throw like a bunch of really technical, nerdy stuff at me, I'm totally fine with you doing that, right? Because that is my expectation at that point. So yeah, I would keep that in mind and try to make it more focused that way. Get out of here, you. Let's do this. I need to set up something that is easier. But yeah. Windows plus arrow keys? Yeah, I know, but like I'm not snapping to half of the screen. I'm snapping to like, I don't know, 90% because I'm trying to align it with the chat. So I need to set something up for that. But thanks for the suggestion though. Cool. Okay, Ashish, let's have a look. This project is going to be my next inspiration. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it is really good. It is really good. So we're gonna start out with artistry, right? Well, let's try to make my notes more succinct, right? Time to swap to Windows 11. I think I am on Windows 11. I am on Windows 11. Let's see. So let me gather my thoughts. I think if you showcase your portfolio like this, it is good. I would remove some of the older work and make it more storytelling heavy, right? So I mean, this is more optional, right? So more storytelling heavy, because that is the recorder, right? So make the prop. But that is optional, because I would want to see you do more, like you said, like more culturally ingrained and more storytelling heavy things, where give me something that I don't see that often, right? And then make it in the best way possible. And I think that could be really interesting. But I can get a good sense that you know what you're doing when it comes to the props. I know what you're doing when it comes to environments. So yeah, I think your hireability and all that stuff is like really, really good. So let's do a quick scan again. We had a look at your resume. We didn't really have a look at like your Instagram. I mean, Instagram is optional, but quick scan here. Yeah, I think this is all good. Contact info. You've got your ArtStation linked in here. Your ArtStation is linked in there as well, which is good. I like it. We had a look at your CV, which is nicely laid out. I think your hireability is actually pretty high, right? Done a fantastic job on breaking all this stuff down. So I think you've done a great job of being like hireable. It's easy to search. Your tagline and how you see yourself. You have a more specific tagline than most other people do, right? Or like your summary is specific. And I think it then gets reflected in the art itself as well, which is good. That's a good thing to have. And your portfolio is easy to navigate. That's more optional for this, because it's all ArtStation. Yeah. But you are very easy to contact and have all the information, right? So hireability is pretty good. I like it. So next thing, presentation. I think there's some older work when it comes to the presentation side that is dragging this number down, right? But especially your latest one, your latest work is really, really good. These two then drag it a bit down because I'm expecting a little bit more, right? But still really good overall. Let's say something like this. I would say that the thing that's dragging it down is that you only showcase the most relevant and best artwork that you can create, right? And that is because there is such a big gap between the cabin and the lake, which is like pretty old already, right? And that is just, it's dragging your portfolio down by just a little bit, right? Because I think if we almost imagine it as like this not being here and then maybe the prop being there with like a little bit of tweaks, that would be way more powerful than having the cabin in the woods on there too. So let's see. Amount of images in your artwork is focused and concise. I think it was. There was never a moment where I was like, oh my God, there's too much of the same stuff, right? You did have a lot of images, which it might border on the side of maybe becoming too much at a certain point. But you can tell, like, I was never really disengaging from the artwork, or I was never really thinking like, ugh, there's just like too much happening, right? It feels like there's enough detail and enough work that is put into your environment to justify something like this, right? There's a lot of really interesting stuff happening, which is really good. I think pretty good overall. So yeah, it's only your older work that's kind of dragging it down a little bit. But yeah. Those things are honestly like easy to fix. So let me bump you up to a 7, let's say. Let's see. And then artistry. I think your artistry is really good, right? Your artistry is like really, really good. I would love to see what the next thing is, right? And I want to see how you then take all the learnings that you've done with a mentorship, right? Because I think you did this with a mentorship and you've worked with multiple people. And I think this is also, let's see, was it not done for, am I mistaken that it was done for a course, I think? Not too sure, actually. Might be mistaken on that. I might be misremembering. Oh, but these are like student projects, right? So this might be for like think tank, I think. Now I'm curious to see like, okay, what do you do without any guidance, right? And that's where maybe the prop comes in, right? Where you can make something like really interesting prop-wise. But yeah. Because that's what I want to see. Like full personal work where you get to showcase what you bring to the table, right? So I'm not really interested in the props and more interested in storytelling through environments. Should I still work on the prop? No, this is like a thing, right? Like where if you want to focus more on the environment art stuff, I think that's totally fine to keep doing that. But then, and this kind of goes very familiar to how I marketed myself, right? I didn't have a prop in my portfolio. I was all in environment art. I didn't care about props. I make props to serve the environment, not the other way around, right? So if you say like, hey, look, I don't care about that, then I would honestly just remove it from your portfolio. It's a difficult one, right? It's a difficult one because I wouldn't remove it from your portfolio necessarily because I think it still serves a purpose. But what I would keep in mind for the next project then is I would at least try to make like one hero prop in your environment that can replace that prop that you made already. Just that is like a little bit more updated, right? Because this one is also like 4 years old. So this is showing its age. I want to see what you can do now when we also ask you, because there's a part of me that is also thinking about like hireability, right? And you are already showcasing a really good understanding of environment art workflows. Now I also want to see how you then expand that thinking to props, right? Because that makes you more hireable. Because if I can see that you can do awesome environments and I can also let you do the occasional prop, that is amazing, right? Makes you more flexible in hiring. Cool. Great stuff. And I think your techniques are solid. I think currently your technique and the way that you showcase it is actually stronger than your artistry. Let me have a look. Or even on par, I would say. Let's not drag too much down. I think your artistry and techniques are like on par at this point, especially when we base it on this project by itself. Ah, dang it. But that's where we get into like some discussions where it comes to, if we break this down into individual things, I'm expecting just like a little bit more, you know? Just like a little bit more detail, to be specific. So maybe, yeah, we'll bump you down on artistry just a little bit, but you do a good job in like lighting and presenting your work. I think you've done a fantastic job, and that's more art fundamentals, right? You know how to really art direct me into the scene. You know good about composition. So I think that's great. So yeah, we'll end it on a 7.5 out of 10, which is a really, really good score. So yeah, I think you're in a really good position. I personally would be pretty happy to have at least a conversation with you to talk about like potentially working for a company, like my fictitious company that I have, right? Especially when basing it on like this last project. There's a lot of good stuff in here, a lot of good breakdowns, a lot of good showcases for different workflows. And you can tell that it is, you pay attention to the details, like all these wires, like all the little details. Yeah, you know your stuff. So if I had a company that was looking for an environment artist, I would definitely be having a chat with you to see if we can make something work. So I think that's really good. Really good stuff. Thank you, Ashish. And best of luck. You're asking if I should join the next Beyond Extend Team Challenge or should I make a new personal project? So if you think about the skills that you're going to be adding to your portfolio, right? I think adding the skills of working within a team, knowing source control, and making sure that you bring the best of your abilities to a team setting are relevant. And also, it only takes like 5 weeks, right? Yeah. I would say in your case, it might be good to do the team challenge, get that done, and then after that, do a new personal project. You're also saying that no companies have approached me yet. Well, you don't have to wait for companies to approach you yet. You should be looking for companies. The current market is very much in favor of a company. You have to reach out. Companies are not going to headhunt you. That is a thing of the past, especially now. Maybe we'll get to that in a certain point. But yeah, there's no way that that's going to happen on its own. Now you need to play the numbers game, right? And that number game means sending out like hundreds and hundreds of applications. Because here's the reality, right? You can have a kick-ass portfolio, but if you are not doing the exact thing that they're looking for in the exact right place, and they have seen your portfolio, then they have not seen your portfolio, then it doesn't matter, right? Because a lot of it, we have control over the skills that we have, right? The skills that you bring to the table are artistic, and I mean, I did not get an interview yet. I've been applying for a month. Yeah, that's the grind. That is the grind, man. Because yeah, you need to be in the right place, the right moment to, to get that position. I can't even find 100 companies to apply for. Here's the thing, Joey. I'll give you a little tier list, right? As you will. I would first start by applying to all the jobs that are on LinkedIn, right? Start there. Then build yourself a Google Sheet with every company in your country. Apply to all of them or reach out to a person that works for that company that is in the hiring position and ask them if they have an open position. Then build yourself an additional Google Sheet that has all the companies in surrounding countries that you can apply for, you can move to, and then do that for the rest of the world, right? And then sure, you can spice it up by like filtering for your favorite companies and all that kind of stuff. It is highly unlikely that you will get that job, but don't let that stop you from trying, right? Put your best foot forward for those companies that you really want to work at. But yeah, you have to, like, I'll tell you one thing, like the way that I approached my hiring or like my application process when I was getting into the industry was literally, I would go to Game Dev Map. I'll show you actually. And I think that site is still around. Game Dev Map. Here we go. This is the way that I approached looking for a job, right? I was like, okay, I live around here, Brussels. Cool. All these. Save them. Save them into a Google Sheet. Find contact information. Put that in the Google Sheet. Send out like as many as I can in a day. Cool. That dot is done. Let's click on this dot. Cool. This is where I would apply. All these companies. Cool. That dot is done. Cool. Next dot. We'll move to the UK. UK has way more companies. Same thing here. And honestly, that's just the way that I did it. I would just have a Google Sheet where it's just like, okay, this developer works here. I would basically take some of this stuff. You can probably do like a way easier job with AI now. And you just say like, hey, look, go to this site, grab me all this data, put it into a Google Sheet with like these requirements and all that kind of stuff. And then you can just start sending it out, right? You can really speed up this whole process. But what I did is manually, I went through all these different sites, filtering for the ones that are not defunct, right? Reaching out to the ones that had open positions first, and then also reaching out to the ones that didn't have an open position. Just all of them. Hitmarker, one more site with maps and jobs. Yeah, the thing that I want to say is that you can start with the aggregate companies, right? But everyone else is also using Hitmarker and LinkedIn and all those companies as well, right? And I think where you might find success is doing the things that no one else is doing, right? I would still say do those things as well, right? Like go to your Hitmarker, go to your LinkedIn or something like that. But I think where you're gonna see a lot of not success, but I think your chances of getting an opening or like a foot in the door with a company that doesn't have open positions but might be looking is probably going to be bigger in a list like this than it is on Hitmarker. Because there's a lot of smaller / indie game developers that might be looking for someone with your skills, but they just don't have like an opening open, you know, or an opening on their website. Weed Market, my current company, reached out to me via email, although I had 3 years of experience under my belt. Yeah, it is a weird market. I mean, there was no guarantee to get into this industry when I started in it, and there's less of a guarantee now to a certain degree, right, with the state of the industry. But that doesn't mean that there's like that doesn't mean that there's aren't any chances, right? And you just have to literally go and do all the hard work and make sure that you reach out to like all these people, right? Build yourself a list. Go from there. That's where the application grind comes from, you know? Because here's the thing. I want to really emphasize that everyone else is doing the same thing that a lot of people are doing already, right? The LinkedIn, the LinkedIn jobs and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, you were at the right time, at the right moment when they needed someone. Yeah, but that can also be you, right? I know a bunch of people that are still getting jobs right now, as we speak. I already got into the industry, but now I'm starting to get back in. Yeah, this industry is not in a good place, as you all know. So it is really difficult to get back in. There are even people there are people that we talk to for workshops, right? Beyond Extent. So these are people with professional experience, multiple years experience, working for multiple companies. There are a lot of people that we talk to that got laid off recently, and they have a lot of valuable experience, So it's not only you, it's not only juniors, it's also seniors. It's a lot of people in the market. It's crazy. And Lydia is saying a month is really not that long when you're job hunting. Yeah, that's also true. And again, this is also where I go back to what we talked on Wednesday stream, right? Where if you notice that you aren't getting jobs, that means that your skill set might not be good enough yet, right? And that's basically the only thing that we have control over, right? So keep adding onto your skill set. But also, what I would say, explore other opportunities when it comes to making your scenes and then potentially selling them, right? Become like an Unreal Engine marketplace seller. Whenever you're making like a cool scene like that, wouldn't it be cool to just like put it online and just be like, hey, look, for I don't know, $20, you can get it and you can relight the whole scene and you get access to all this stuff, right? Yeah. Networking is super, super important now, more than ever too. Yeah, networking has always been important. It's just changed in terms of what that means now, right? For example, like this is something that I'll do, right? Like if people, this doesn't happen that much anymore, but if people come and talk to me and they're like, hey, we need like an artist. Do you have like someone? Because I know that you run Beyond Extent. And there are people that were like, yeah, talk to them. I can give you a list. How many do you need? Because there is a list in my mind that I know these people are to be trusted and they're looking for a job, right? And some of that comes from, I don't know, it just comes from like impressing me with like their work in progress Wednesday, or impressing me with their finished work, or impressing me with the team challenges, right? And I don't want to make that sound like that is like a me thing and like we're being very specific, right? But I think that's what everyone does, and that's how networking now works. Even if you don't talk to each other, I kind of have a good idea of what everyone in this chat is doing at this point and how good that quality level is, right? And other people in different companies will probably do the same thing. They might be lurking in places where you don't expect them to lurk. Someone reached out to me 3 days after I made my profile open to work on LinkedIn. Yeah, I think that's also a good thing. So I think that's also a good thing. I would also say that there's like community support groups like Amir Savat, right? Like that's like a big one on LinkedIn. Like see what they have to offer, right? See what they have to offer. Indie companies with tight budgets reach out to weaker third world countries. That's true. Let's see. Wait, this is replying to something else. I got a job as an animator when I finished my school because they needed someone. I have a basic level in animation. Someone reached out to me. Yeah, I mean, so indie companies with a tight budget reach out to cheaper countries, basically. So I think that's not only indie games. I think that's everywhere, right? That's where we're seeing the shift. There's so much financial pressure on AAA. We talked about this at length before, but like, a lot of companies are doing this, right? It's always a question. It's always a question for a company of like, hey, look, if we can get like the same expected quality for like 10% of like the investment, why don't we do that, right? Especially now in this like ever-connected world, right? For networking, I usually ask for portfolio reviews or ask a question about their portfolio. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like the difficult thing about networking is that you don't necessarily want it to be transactional, even though that is your gut instinct about being transactional, right? Because there is a different element to this. For example, in your case, Ashish, we just had a look at your portfolio. I have a really good understanding of like who you are as an artist and what you do, right? But I don't have an idea about your soft skills yet. So that is like the other part of the equation where I wouldn't hire you on the spot. I would need to talk to you and kind of figure out like who you are as a person, and like how do you deal with the soft skills of things. So yeah, that's where, because a portfolio review is like not really networking, right? But it's very difficult for a junior to like effectively networking without being in person, I feel. Because yeah, you want to leave a lasting impression, but that is more difficult if I have an issue with like putting face to the work, right? Yeah. But I think you're already doing the right stuff, right? You have your profile picture out there, your name is clearly visible. That's already like doing a lot of good stuff. But yeah, networking is interesting in the day of online stuff. I did not expect to be paid as much as a junior just out of school. I think I have to think back at my own junior times, right, where I got my first job. I looked at that number and I was like, man, that sounds so good. Sign me up. Because my comparison was nothing, right? It turns out that it wasn't that good, but I couldn't care less because I just wanted to work on a game. Game jams are good. Oh, that's a good point, actually. Game jams are really good. Game jams are really good. That's a good point. I think that's something that I want to do. Oh, wait. I just got reminded of something that Rustam said. I think, was it before? Really interesting question about the challenge. I'm thinking about the same. Could you suggest something? Yeah, I mean, I can suggest something. It depends on what you ask. Chashil is asking, how long has it been for you in games, Tim? Almost 10 years. We're coming up to my 10-year anniversary in games. So I started in the industry in 2016 when we moved to the UK. I had a comparison with a friend. It's because there were other artists on the project and they put me on the same amount. Yeah, I mean, that's good. That's good. Best way to network is standing outside the office of a game studio and greeting every person until they hire you. Interesting that you say that. There is a person that tried to do that recently, well, fairly recently at Playground Games, and they unfortunately, it didn't work out for them. That was interesting. I mean, wouldn't that be awesome that it still worked like that? Because you hear about like all these big shots in the games industry where like Todd Howard was just like, hey, just pestering like the people enough until they got a job in the game industry. Like, I wish it still worked like that, you know? That genuine passion of just like, hey, look, come on. I'm here. Come on, let's go. Okay, we'll do a couple more questions, a couple of minutes of just chatting, and then I'll have to go for a meeting. But it was lovely so far. So let's see. Ashish, do you think that the games industry has evolved for the better over years? That is a complex question. So I think, did he get an interview at least? No, he did not. He did not get an interview. If I was running my own company, I would have at least given him an interview, you know, and then see what came out of it. But no, unfortunately, he didn't. But yeah, do you think that the games industry has evolved for the better over years? That is because it's such a complex question, because I immediately think about like the monetization of games now and how that's changed the cultural perception of games and what that is doing to younger kids, right? Which is something that I feel very strongly about and I don't agree with. But if we're talking about like the game dev side of it, it is interesting that teams ballooned and we were making these like massive, really production heavy games now, where even when I joined, you know, like Frontier Developments was a company of, oh god, I don't even know. Like, I want to guess like 100 people, right? And I felt, I think at our peak for Planet Coaster, we were like 70 people, including everyone, right? Like, this is everyone working on the game, 70 people, I think, if I remember the numbers correctly. But that felt like a nice size. And then I went from that to like Ubisoft, which is like, wow, okay, stuff works at like a different level. And it was really hard to maintain some of the creative connections and the intermingling between different disciplines. That was really hard to maintain, right? And I think that's also why we're seeing, how should I even say this? Like, we're seeing less creative stuff happen in big established games, is because we lost touch with those really interesting down-to-earth conversations of just like, hey, this is a cool idea, can we try this? And then the animator who sits behind you says like, yeah, let's do it, let's give it a try, and then you whip up something, right? It feels more like an actual production than like a creative thing anymore, right? Joseph Ferris from Hazelight said that he didn't want to grow a studio significantly bigger than it is right now, which is about 100 people. Yeah, and I think 100 people might also be like on the border of like just barely being able to manage, right? It is interesting. I've heard a lot of stories or a lot of, I don't know, I guess research done on this, that 70 seems to be like a good point. But I think it's very interesting that you see, for example, something like Expedition 33, right? Where you have 33 developers working with like a bunch of outsourced people. But that means that the creative spirit within the studio is focused on making the game better and better, and that the external people that are working on the game, they don't really have that big of an impact, because that would muddy the water, right? It would make for a less impactful game than it is now, I feel. So there is something interesting happening where this is the shift that we're currently seeing of like smaller core teams with stronger creative visions, potentially. We'll see how that works out. And then, yeah, a lot of supporting studios like on the fringes of it. But yeah, it is interesting to see it. It is interesting to see it. I've been inspired by the Game Jam peak recently. They're millionaires now, and it all started with a Game Jam. This is interesting, right? Because I mean, I have the same tendency where it's like, man, I want to make a product that sells really well, and then I don't have to think about the product again, right? Because then I have enough money to just focus on creative vision. But the interesting thing is that those people became millionaires because they probably didn't care about money. So that's a dichotomy, right? And I feel if you go into a setting like that, like with even the slight intention, or like with the goal of also making a lot of money, then that impedes on the creative vision, right? I mean that's probably not what you wanted to say, but yeah, it's something that I'm trying to think a lot about. If I were to at some point like start making my own game or something like that, right? That the vision is a thing that drives the game, right? And then if the game happens to be a hit, then that is also the case, right? But there's also thousands of games that have started with a really good vision, and then they just sell a couple of copies, right? So it's a very harsh industry where the stuff that we're doing now, trying to get into the industry and, you know, playing basically like spinning the wheel and hoping that we get in. The same happens on making indie games as well. It's just that making an indie game takes like 3 to 4 years. And that is your only product, right? Where technically what we do on like an artistic side is that we make a lot of products that we could potentially sell, which we're most of the time not doing, but we could do that. And we have more flexibility in it. I don't know, a little bit of a rant there. But yeah. Yeah, game jams are really good though. I think it's very valuable, especially if you have a game idea. A game jam is a really good way of like stress testing if it's really going to work out, right? Because if it doesn't work out on like a stretch of like a couple of days, then it's definitely not going to work out in like a couple of years. I meant, is it more valuable in my case to join the team challenge or put some more effort in job seeking, or maybe some strong studio aligned hero prop? That is up to you. That is up to you, honestly, Rustam. I would say that's like an individual choice to make. It also depends on where you want to, what you want to do next, right? But yeah. I'm bringing cookies. Maybe it will help. Hey, you got to respect the grind at least. That's what I'm saying. Like that person who just like turned up at the studio. I'm pretty sure that 99% of it would not meant that we would hire him ever, right? Or like hire them. I don't even know who they were really. But there is something where it's like it's entertaining, at least, you know? You gotta respect it. Just thinking so far outside the box that it was just like, hey, look, I'm just gonna rock up and probably travel like a significant distance as well to then just like show up impromptu at a studio. That is interesting. Yes. Okay. I do have to go now because we do have the meeting to talk about the team challenges and the course. So I appreciate you all taking the time out of your day to sit here, chat about game dev stuff, and watch me do portfolio reviews. If you want to do a portfolio review yourself, become a member, sign up for the portfolio reviews. We are making quick headways in the back catalog. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, make sure to go to our website, become a member, and then you can sign up for portfolio reviews. We do weekly work reviews and all that kind of good stuff as well. What we're basically trying to do is we want to make you an environment artist in games, right? So that's my personal job. That's why I'm here, and I'm glad I get to share that with all of you. So yeah, thank you all for being here, and have a nice day. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.